Hello, fabulous globetrotters and curious minds tuning in on YouTube. Oh, it's Mira, bursting with enough energy to power a small city, and I'm thrilled to be back in our cozy studio, which, by the way, almost became my personal dance arena just yesterday. You see, I decided to attempt this incredibly intricate traditional dance routine I saw from, well, somewhere. And let's just say my living room became a whirlwind of limbs and questionable. Well, it was a real Mira's impromptu light Sherman and became a whirlwind of limbs and my god cat.
Mira, you're not just a human disco ball. You're a human disaster ball sometimes. I can picture it now, Mittens, a connoisseur of quiet naps, suddenly witnessing a glitter-fueled entanglement. I should witnessing a glitter-fueled entanglement. Oh, this again. I imagine the cat thinking, I swear you could trip over a flat floor and turn it into a performance art piece. Meanwhile, I was trying to find a coffee shop that actually understood of half full, which, apparently, is a high-level barista challenge these days.
Oh, come on, Leo. You're always so focused on the correct amount of milk. Life's too short for precise coffee measurements, isn't it, guys? Oh, but speaking of unexpected adventures, even if they're just in my living room, today we're taking you on a journey to two countries that promise nothing short of unique experiences. We're talking about places where you might find yourself in delightfully unpredictable situations. Haha. So, grab your drink of choice, hopefully. You're better at not spilling than I am, and get ready.
Indeed, friends. And before Mira decides to choreograph a ballet with her coffee mug, let's get serious, well, as serious as we get, which isn't very. Today, we're pitting two fascinating yet incredibly distinct nations against each other, the vibrant cultures of Papua New Guinea and the breathtaking landscapes of Venezuela. Wow! It's a matchup that will definitely pique your curiosity, or at least make you ponder.
Ooh, we know many of you, yes. You, watching on YouTube right now, are constantly grappling with the big questions. Which country offers the best cultural immersion? Where can I find an adventure that truly pushes the limits? Or which place will make my social media feed truly pop? Today, we're not just scratching the surface, we're diving deep into the heart of both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela to unearth their core differences.
We're going to break down everything from their astonishing natural beauty and rich cultural tapestry to practical considerations like daily life, local customs, and maybe even a few tips for surviving their respective climates. Are you a free spirit dreaming of remote tribal encounters and unparalleled biodiversity? Or are you drawn to dramatic waterfalls, rich history, and lively rhythms? We'll help you decide.
If you're contemplating a visit, planning a move, or who knows, even thinking about marrying someone from one of these incredible places, don't forget to tell us about it in the comments below. This podcast is your ultimate guide. Wow, we're here to answer all those nagging questions bouncing around in your head.
Consider this your comprehensive, witty, and occasionally featuring Mira's chaotic energy handbook to making an informed decision. And a huge thanks to Jet Off Air, our fantastic partner, who helps us bring these global comparisons right to your ears and eyes for our YouTube audience. They're truly the wind beneath our podcasting wings.
Oh, so stay tuned, buckle up, and get ready to explore the fascinating worlds of Papua New Guinea and Venezuela with us. This isn't just a podcast, it's an adventure. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It's a small click for you, a giant leap for our caffeine addiction. Alright, Leo, since we just wrapped up that last whirlwind of a discussion, let's pivot to something a little more grounded, or perhaps less grounded depending on how you look at it. Today's focus is on general safety and crime rates, into truly unique places Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Now, my inner adventurer is always buzzing. But even I pause for a minute with these destinations. Ooh.
My inner cynic just raised an eyebrow. Mira, you always manage to make crime rates sound like a treasure hunt. Wow. Papua New Guinea, or PNG, as the cool kids say, is often painted with broad strokes of danger, isn't it? My travel notes are usually filled with try the street food or find the weirdest local dance, but for PNG, it's more like watch your wallet and don't wander alone at night. Oops. I'm pretty certain that our listeners who have even just Googled it would agree with me.
Oh, come on, Lear. You always see the glass half empty, even when it's filled with coffee. Yes, PNG, especially cities like Port Moresby and Delae, does have its challenges. You hear about rascal gangs and tribal violence, which sounds a bit like an action movie plot, doesn't it? Whoa. But seriously, for visitors, it's mostly about opportunistic crime in crowded areas. It's like any big city. You just have to be extra aware. For instance, if you're planning a trip, Chesum great on staying informed about local conditions.
Opportunistic crime, you say? Sounds like a polite way of saying someone's looking to acquire your shiny new phone. I remember once, I was in a market, and a guy tried to sell me my own hat back to me. Ouch. That's next level salesmanship. But with PNG, the tribal violence aspect is a different beast, isn't it? It's not just about keeping your phone in your front pocket, it's a deeper, more systemic issue rooted in socio-canción factors and traditional disputes. It's less spoops. I dropped my wallet.
You always dive straight into the deep end, don't you? But you're right. The nuances are important. Now, speaking of places with their own unique challenges, let's talk about Venezuela. Wow. This is a country that's seen its share of ups and downs, particularly in recent years. The economic situation has definitely had an impact on safety, making it a difficult place for both locals and travelers. Oh.
Venezuela. That's another one that lights up my extra caution light on the internal dashboard. The reports of violent crime, kidnappings, even express kidnappings, which sounds like a bad fast food order, are pretty alarming. It's almost like the country itself has a caution tape sign raped over it. It's not just about petty theft, it's the kind of place where you really need to be on high alert. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Have any of you navigated these waters?
Well, you make it sound like a scene from a thriller movie. Well, it's true that the situation in Venezuela demands serious vigilance, especially in major cities like Caracas. It's important not to just write off entire nations. Aha! Awareness is key. You need to research safe neighborhoods, avoid public transport at night, and ideally have local contacts. It's a place where you prioritize safety over spontaneity, which is tough for my adventurous spirit, but necessary.
Prioritize safety over spontaneity? Ouch. Mira, you just uttered a phrase that makes my stand-up comedian soul weep. But in all seriousness, for both PNG and Venezuela, the underlying issues are often linked to poverty, political instability, and a lack of effective law enforcement. It's not just random acts, it's a consequence of larger societal fractures. My observational skills would be working overtime there, probably from inside a locked hotel room.
Don't be such a drama queen, Leo. While the statistics can be daunting, responsible travel is still possible. It means doing your homework, staying updated, and respecting local advice. You can find detailed guides on Jet Off AI that can help you understand the specific risks. Plus, every country, no matter its challenges, has vibrant cultures and resilient people. It's not all doom and gloom if you approach it with the right mindset and precautions.
Right. It's all about mindset and precautions. Like bringing your own security detail and a therapist to process the cultural vibrancy. But seriously, if you're thinking about visiting either of these, do your due diligence, check travel advisories, and maybe even look at some of the latest videos on YouTube about traveler experiences. It's a jungle out there, folks, and sometimes the best joke is staying safe enough to tell the story later.
I was just thinking about how our last chat got everyone talking about what makes a place feel like home. Oh, and speaking of home, let's dive into something crucial for feeling settled: political stability and social harmony. Today's spotlight shines on Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Whoa. I mean, two very different vibes, wouldn't you say, Leo?
Different vibes is quite the understatement, Mira. You're talking about countries, one known for its incredible tribal diversity and rugged landscapes. The other, well, let's just say it's been on a roller coaster ride without a safety harness. Ouch. My coffee's almost finished just thinking about it. I'm certain our listeners are already wondering what kind of wild ride we're about to take them on.
Always with the drama, Leo. But you're right, both present unique challenges. Let's look at Papua New Guinea first. It's a land of incredible diversity, 850 plus languages, thousands of tribal groups. Well, that kind of diversity is beautiful, but it can also make social harmony a really complex juggling act, couldn't it?
Absolutely. It's like trying to get 850 different bands to play the same tune at the same tune at the same tune on different instruments. PNG's political system is a parliamentary democracy, but it's often described as a volatile one. Governments change faster than my mind changes about what to have for dinner. And then you have local issues like disputes over land or resources, sometimes tied to tribal loyalties. It's less about a unified national crisis and more about localized tensions bubbling up.
That's a good point. It's often about local dynamics rather than a top-down political earthquake. For anyone thinking of living there, especially expats, understanding these local customs and allegiances is super important. You don't just move to a specific region with its own intricate social fabric. I'm actually curious about what our listeners who have lived in PNG think about this. Feel free to drop a comment below on YouTube.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to accidentally get involved in a centuries-old chicken-stealing feud between villages. Oops, that's my kind of material, actually. That's my kind of material, actually. Political stability there often involves a delicate balance between central government authority and the power of traditional tribal structures. When those two don't see eye to eye, things can get, shall we say, interesting.
Interesting is one way to put it. There's also a strong sense of community in many areas, especially in rural villages. People rely on each other. It's a different kind of harmony, perhaps not the one we typically define from a Western perspective. But it's there.
True. Now let's pivot sharply, because from PNG's diverse local tensions, we swing over to Venezuela's situation, which feels like a completely different beast altogether. Whoa, here we're talking about profound political instability at the national level. Disputed elections, opposition crackdowns, a government that's been accused of authoritarianism. It's a heavy cocktail.
Oh, Venezuela. It makes my heart ache, honestly. Oh, the social fabric has been under immense strain due to the economic crisis. When people are struggling to find food and medicine, it naturally leads to social unrest and deep divisions. It's not just political anymore. It's a daily struggle for survival for many.
Absolutely. And where there's that kind of pressure, social harmony often takes a holiday, or worse, it just gets trampled. High crime rates, gang violence, mass immigration. These are all symptoms of a society under incredible duress. I mean, if you're not laughing, you're probably crying. And I'm usually doing both often at the same time if my coffee runs out.
You'd probably turn the whole situation into a sarcastic monologue about empty shelves, wouldn't you? But seriously, the Venezuela is intense. It's not just disagreements, it's two very distinct visions for the country, often clashing in the streets. For anyone considering a move there, which, let's be honest, is a very specific kind of adventurer right now. Understanding this deep divide is crucial.
Indeed, while PNG's challenges are often geographically dispersed and tied to local customs, Venezuela's are concentrated and systemic, affecting almost every citizen directly. One is a mosaic of different mini-societies, the other is a nation trying to hold onto a single, very frayed thread. Both unique in their own adventure sense, but for very different reasons.
It really puts into perspective what stability means, doesn't it? In PNG, it might mean stable tribal relations in a specific valley, while in Venezuela, it's about the very foundations of the state. Wow, it's a stark contrast. So, if you're thinking about stability, you really have to define what kind you're looking for.
And where you're willing to find your humor. Because in one, it might be from the sheer absurdity of local disputes, and in the other, it's more of a gallows humor, from national struggles. On that note, for anyone trying to navigate the complexities of international travel and relocation, our friends over at Jedolfe have some fantastic resources. They're like a travel guide that doesn't judge your choice of extreme destinations. Ooh.
I love that. A travel guide that doesn't judge. Perfect for your adventurous spirit, Leo. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. Alright, so since we were just discussing stunning landscapes, let's talk about something a little more grounded literally, in some cases economic conditions and the cost of living. Oh, you know, Leo, when I hear Papua New Guinea, my mind immediately goes to golden gas. It's like the earth there is just showing off its blind.
Yeah, blind is one way to put it, Mirror. For anyone thinking of moving there, especially to places like Port Moresby, that blind often comes with a hefty price tag. We're talking about a country rich in natural resources, but those resources usually mean big international players, and everything that comes with that, from housing to imported goods, gets inflated. It's like you go for the gold, but your wallet leaves a lot lighter.
Oh, so it's not exactly a budget backpacker's paradise then, huh? I was imagining myself bartering fresh coconuts for a handmade necklace, not tempting my bank account for a loaf of bread. But seriously, it's a fascinating contrast, so much natural wealth. Yet the cost of daily life for an expat can be astronomical because everything has to be flown in, I guess.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to find decent coffee in Port Moresby without selling a kidney. It's a land of incredible potential, but logistical challenges and a dual economy mean that while local markets offer more affordable options, the expat lifestyle and the jobs that typically draw foreigners are anything but cheap. It's a very specific kind of economic reality.
Speaking of stark realities, let's pivot dramatically to Venezuela. Whoa. From a country with high expat costs due to scarcity and demand, we move to a place where, well, money almost seems to have lost its meaning. It's like my budget on a shopping spree starts strong, then just evaporates.
Oops, Mira, that's a brutal comparison to your shopping habits. But you're right, Venezuela is an entirely different beast. For anyone earning foreign currency, the cost of living, on paper, can seem incredibly low due to hyperinflation. You could technically buy a mansion for the price of a fancy coffee in PNG. But the catch is, finding anything to put in that mansion is the real treasure hunt.
A treasure hunt for toilet paper. I'm actually curious about what our listeners who understand this dynamic think about it. It's not just about prices, but availability, right? It's like going to a grocery store where the shelves are full of, well, imagination. Well, you might have enough money for a gourmet meal, but the only thing on offer is a bag of rice.
Exactly. It's a humanitarian crisis wrapped in an economic one. For locals, life is incredibly tough, often relying on remittances from abroad. The job market for expats is virtually non-existent unless you're involved in aid or taking extreme risks. It's a stark reminder that cheap doesn't equal easy or livable. You can't just stroll into a cafe for a latte, you might be lucky to find a generator.
PNG might challenge your bank account, while Venezuela would challenge your very ability to find basic necessities. It's like choosing between a really expensive 5-star restaurant that actually has food and a very cheap 5-star restaurant that just has a nice menu with no ingredients.
I'd take the expensive food, at least it exists. But seriously, if you're looking for job market stats, PNG has opportunities in specific sectors like oil, gas, and mining, which often come with expat packages designed to offset the high costs. Venezuela, however, is not a place where you generally seek employment as a foreigner right now. It's more about survival and humanitarian efforts.
And that's why understanding the why behind the numbers is so important, isn't it? It's not just about average prices, it's about the entire economic ecosystem. Speaking of ecosystems, for anyone planning to really dig into these details, remember to check out Cheto Fei. They've got tons of resources.
Indeed. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if you find this comparison eye-opening or just enjoy Mira's ability to turn economic collapse into a shopping analogy, please hit that like button. And if you think this is wrong or have a different perspective, please let us know in the comments. We love a good debate, especially when it's about not being able to buy coffee.
See, Leo, even you can make light of a serious situation. Ultimately, when it comes to economic conditions on cost of living, these two countries couldn't be more different in their challenges for expats. One is a high-cost frontier, the other a tragic economic experiment.
A tragic experiment where the main export is currency devaluation. Whoa, so, if you're planning your next adventure, remember to factor in not just the price tag, but what that price tag actually gets you. Or, in Venezuela's case, what it doesn't get you.
Moving right along, let's talk about accommodation options and quality. Now, when you think Papua New Guinea, what's the first image that pops into your head for housing? For me, it's colourful stilt houses by the water. But for expats, I hear it's more like a fortress chic vibe.
Fortress chic? I like that mirror. It's either a colorful stilt house that might be slightly less stable than your average coffee table, or you're in Port Moresby in a highly secured compound that costs more than my last 3 international flights combined. Whoa, there's no middle ground. It's either an adventure or an investment in blast-proof windows.
Blast-proof windows. You're making it sound like a spy movie. But you're right. In places like Port Moresby, you see a lot of these gated communities for expats. They're usually well maintained, come with amenities, and a security guard who probably knows more about your daily schedule than you do. It's like living in a luxury resort, but with a slightly higher fence.
It's less a resort and more a very expensive gilded cage for those who can afford it. And outside of these expat enclaves, the quality can drop off faster than my Wi-Fi when I'm trying to upload a podcast. Ouch. If you're looking for local flavor, you might find more traditional housing, but you're also looking at vastly different standards of infrastructure. I'm certain that our listeners living in PNG would agree with me sometimes charming just means no running water.
Well, since we've touched on the charming lack of amenities, let's swing over to Venezuela. Wow. I imagine the housing market there is a whole different kind of adventure, right? From what I've heard, it's less about fortress chic and more about, can I keep the lights on and the water running?
You're not wrong, Mira. In Venezuela, especially in cities like Caracas, you might find what were once beautiful, modern apartments, but quality often comes with a caveat these days. You might get a stunning view of Ella Villa, but also a spontaneous lights-out party at 8 p.m., compliments of the local power grid. It's like living in a constantly evolving escape room.
Oh, an escape room, but you're trying to escape the darkness. I love it. So, is it mostly apartments in the cities, or are there different kinds of housing available? I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this, because from the outside, it feels like the housing situation can be pretty unpredictable.
mostly apartments in the urban centers. Historically, Venezuela had a robust housing market, but economic instability has certainly taken its toll. You're looking at varying levels of maintenance, and the phrase quality needs to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. You'll find everything from luxurious penthouses to buildings that haven't seen a fresh coat of paint or a reliable water supply in decades. Whoa, your biggest amenity might be a neighbor with a generator.
In PNG, the challenge is finding something high quality and secure. Often it's a very high price, while in Venezuela, it's more about consistency in basic services, even if the initial structure was good. Wow, it's like one offers a buy it for life option, but it's really expensive, and the other offers a surprise me daily package.
Exactly, and let's not forget the rental market. In PNG, those expat compounds can command eye-watering rents, often paid in advance. In Venezuela, while prices might seem low in local currency, they're often quoted in USD, and even then, things are volatile. Ouch. It's a game of will my rent buy a single avocado next month? You might find a bargain, but it could come with a leaky roof and intermittent. It's why services like Jet Off A buy are so crucial for expats researching these unique markets.
A leaky roof and internet and intimate, a comedian's paradise for material, Leo. But seriously, the level of personal investment in making a place livable seems much higher in Venezuela. In PNG, you might pay a premium for a turnkey solution, but in Venezuela, you might be buying buckets for water outages and stocking up on candles.
My point exactly. It's less about choosing a house and more about choosing your daily challenges. And for both countries, if you're venturing outside the main expat or tourist areas, your definition of quality really needs to stretch. Oh, you might find incredible hospitality, but maybe also a bed that looks like it survived a wrestling match.
A bed that survived a wrestling match, that's quite an image. I'm certain our listeners thinking of moving to either country are now either terrified or incredibly intrigued. So whether it's a secured compound in PNG or an apartment in Caracas, with its own set of surprises, finding accommodation is definitely an experience in both places. Wow. Our current topic, we compare the use of visa, immigration, and official procedures into countries Papua New Guinea and Venezuela, highlighting the bureaucratic journey for expats. From clear policy details to practical tips and real stories, we simplify the process. Discover each country's approach and how it affects settling in. When I think about paperwork, I usually picture mountains of forms, but with Papua New Guinea, I almost imagine actual mountains.
You're not wrong, Mira. Papua New Guinea's immigration process can feel less like a straightforward path and more like an expedition into the unknown. Whoa, I've heard stories that would make a seasoned adventurer want to just stay home and fill out tax forms. Now that's saying something. It's like they've hidden the visa office behind a series of ancient riddles and a very hungry crocodile. You might need a map from Indiana Jones just to figure out the initial application.
Oh, ancient riddles and a hungry crocodile. That sounds like a fantastic premise for a new reality show. But seriously, what makes it so challenging for someone trying to get a visa or a work permit there? I'm certain that our listeners thinking about moving to Papua New Guinea would appreciate some clarity.
Well, for starters, the general infrastructure isn't exactly built for speedy bureaucracy. Ouch. Internet access can be sporadic and information isn't always uploaded or easily accessible online. You often need to deal with physical documents, multiple government departments, and potentially long waiting periods. It's less about fast-track processing and more about eventually, maybe, if the wind is blowing right processing. It's an exercise in patience or perhaps an unplanned bland meditation or perhaps.
I can just picture someone trying to submit their documents, then suddenly losing their Wi-Fi connection right as they click send. Oops, It truly sounds like a test of character. Speaking of character, how does Venezuela compare in this bureaucratic labyrinth? Are we trading crocodiles for, I don't know, a salsa dance-off with the immigration officer?
Wow. A salsa dance-off might actually be more predictable, Mira. Venezuela presents a different kind of challenge. Due to the shifting political and economic landscape, immigration policies and requirements can change with little notice. Whoa, what was valid last week might be obsolete this week. It's like playing a game of bureaucratic whack-a-mole. Ouch! You hit one requirement, and two new ones pop up. And let's not forget the currency situation, which can add another layer of complexity to any fee-based processes.
Papua New Guinea is a physical journey through red tape, and on the other, Venezuela is a constantly changing dance with official decrees. It makes me wonder if either country offers any sort of expats-friendly services or help, like our helpful travel guides at Jet Off AI that simplify complex destinations. I mean, do you just show up with a smile and hope for the best? Or is there a system? Oh.
A smile helps everywhere, Mira, but I wouldn't bet your residency on it in either case. In Papua New Guinea, you often rely on local connections or employer sponsorship, which can somewhat smooth the path, but it's still largely a hands-on, persistent effort. For Venezuela, reputable local lawyers or immigration consultants are almost a necessity to navigate the ever-changing maze of requirements. Ouch! But even then, success isn't guaranteed, and the process can be expensive and lengthy.
Wow. So for our brave listeners considering either destination, and I know there are some adventurous souls out there, they really need to do their homework. And by homework, I mean probably cross-reference multiple sources because yesterday's information might be today's ancient history.
Absolutely, Mira. I'd tell anyone looking into this to check official government websites religiously and then triple-check with embassies or consulates. And if you're feeling adventurous, maybe consult Jet Off AI for some preliminary research. It might at least point you in the right direction for the nearest crocodile-free zone. Seriously though, preparing for potential delays and having contingency plans is crucial, because in both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela, bureaucratic hurdles are less about if and more about if and more about.
That's a very blunt, Leo-esque way of putting it. But true. I think the key takeaway here is flexibility and persistence. If you're planning a long-term stay in either country, consider the visa and immigration process part of your initial adventure, not just a formality. Whoa, it's like an unexpected prologue to your grand story there. And for everyone listening, if you've had an interesting or surprisingly smooth experience with immigration in these countries, please do share it in the comments below on Nutritional. Please do share it in the curious.
Yes, your stories keep us sane, or at least provide new material. And remember, whether it's the mountains of forms in Papua New Guinea or the shifting sands of policy in Venezuela, understanding the unique challenges is half the battle. Knowing what you're up against helps you prepare your travel toolkit, which should include extra patience and probably a good sense of humor.
And maybe a strong coffee supply. Especially for you. So, in both cases, the ease of visa and immigration isn't exactly a walk in the park. It's more like an obstacle course, but one that can lead to incredible experiences if you're prepared. Well, I actually love how every challenge becomes an opportunity for a new story. Ooh, just last week I was trying a new dance move, long story short. My knee decided it had enough of my enthusiasm. Oops! I swear, mirror versus gravity is a never-ending saga. It got me thinking about how important it is to have good healthcare when your own body decides to stage a tiny rebellion.
Mira, your dance moves are legendary for all the wrong reasons. I can just picture you saying, "My body's just expressing itself uniquely," while your knee screams for a pain reliever. Well, speaking of bodies and rebellion, Today we're actually diving into access to and quality of health services in Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. And trust me, a slightly twisted knee would be the least of your worries in some of those places.
Wow, I was just about to say that. But seriously, Leo, for those adventurous souls considering a move or even just a long visit to Papua New Guinea, what's the lowdown on staying healthy? I'm imagining a lot of jungle trekking, not exactly popping into a state-of-the-art clinic for a hangnail.
That. You're not far off, Mira. In Papua New Guinea, the terrain itself is a major hurdle. Imagine needing to see a doctor in your nearest option as a today walk through dense rainforest, or maybe a canoe ride. Wow, the public health system is quite basic, underfunded, and suffers from a severe shortage of trained staff. Meta suffers from a severe shortage of trained staff, medicines, and equipment. In PNG would agree with me. It's not a place for spontaneous appendicitis. Ouch. It's less about a minor scralia for anything serious. Ouch.
Whoa, medical evacuation to Australia. That's quite the commute for a checkup. But, even with those challenges, I bet the local communities have incredible traditional healers with deep knowledge of herbs and natural remedies. Oh, it's like having ancient wisdom as your first line of defense, right? Though, I'm not sure if a traditional healer would know what to do with my disco knee after a particularly vigorous karaoke session. Oops.
While I appreciate your optimistic spin on ancient remedies, Mira, let's not romanticize the very real public health crisis. Especially when we pivot to Venezuela. Here, it's not about geographical isolation but economic collapse. The once decent public health care system has disintegrated. Hospitals lack everything from basic medicines and equipment to electricity and even running water. Wow, I heard a joke once that in Venezuelan hospitals, the doctors diagnose you, and then they nurse you.
Oh, that's so tough to hear, Leo. It sounds like a truly heartbreaking situation for the local population. So, for an expat, would private clinics be the only option in Venezuela? Or even those struggling with the shortages? For anyone watching this on YouTube, it really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? If you're planning a trip, definitely check out Jet Off AI for essential travel advisories before you go.
Absolutely, Mira. For expats in Venezuela, private clinics are the only viable choice, but even they face significant challenges due to the wider economic situation. They might have better infrastructure, but they also struggle with medicine imports and staff retention. Ouch. So robust private health insurance that covers medical evacuation is not just recommended. Its non-fugation is not just recommended. It's non-fugatiable. It's like planning for a camping trip in the wilderness. You pack everything you might possibly need because local resources are scarce.
You make it sound like an extreme adventure sport, Leo. But that's a very clear picture. So, what's the common thread here, if there is one, for both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela regarding healthcare for expats? It sounds like both require a serious personal investment in preparation beyond just packing extras and screen.
You hit the nail on the head, Mira. The common thread for expats in both countries is the absolute necessity of comprehensive private health insurance, ideally with a medical evacuation clause. In PNG, it's due to geographical and developmental limitations in Venezuela. It's the systemic collapse. Wow, neither place is where you want to test your luck with a sudden illness. So if you're out there listening and thinking of these destinations, check out Jet Off AI for all your travel prep needs, especially when it comes to understanding needs.
Yes, and remember, for more in-depth information on what it's like living in these places, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave us a comment about your own experiences. Oh, we're always curious about what our listeners think. It sounds like the key to well-being in both countries is more about meticulous planning than relying on spontaneity, even for a minor scratch. Well, since we were just talking about embracing cultural quirks, let's talk about how you actually get to those quirks. I'm talking about transportation infrastructure and convenience in Papua. And now, Leo, You've probably seen some interesting modes of transport in your travels, but these two countries have some real hold onto your hat situations, don't they?
Hold on to your hat is an understatement for some places. More like, hold on to your entire vehicle because the road might just disappear. Papua New Guinea, for instance. We're talking about a country where the terrain itself seems to actively resist roads. Imagine building a stand-up stage on a volcano's slope that's pretty much their infrastructure challenge. Ouch.
Oh, come on. You'd find a way to make that stage work, I bet. But you're right. PNG's geography is wild, it's all mountains, dense rainforest, and rivers. So instead of a bustling metro, you've got bush plains, landing on grass strips and long dugout canoes called dinghies as public transport. Oh, it's like every journey is an adventure quest.
An adventure quest where you might accidentally end up in a different province because the pilot misread a cloud formation. And convenience. That's a word whispered in myths there, I think. If your commute involves waiting for a small plane to clear a flock of exotic birds off the runway, you've got stories, but probably not punctuality. I bet our listeners who are used to 5-minute subway waits can't even fathom that. What do you all think about this? Tell us below in the YouTube comments.
Well, speaking of stories, the absence of extensive road networks means you're really relying on small local airports in these boats. Aha! It forces communities to be self-sufficient or very creative about logistics. It's not just a journey, it's practically a mini expedition every time you leave your village. Well...
Right. A mini expedition that also means everything you need from building supplies to your morning coffee beans has to navigate this same, shall we say, unconventional system. Which, I imagine, adds a charming little surcharge to everything. Ouch! Now Venezuela, while it has more paved roads than PNG, has its own unique set of, mobility puzzles.
Oh, I've heard. While it has major highways, maintaining them can be a challenge. It's like trying to keep a perfectly ironed shirt in a hurricane. And public transport in major cities like Caracas. What's the vibe there? I imagine it's less about bush planes and more about, well, creative carpooling.
Creative is a polite way to put it, Mir. You've got your traditional bus networks, a metro in Caracas, which is actually quite efficient when it runs, but the economic realities have put a serious dent in everything. Finding spare parts for vehicles is tough, so you see all sorts of vintage cars lovingly kept alive, and public transport can be erratic and very crowded. Oh, it's like a rolling improv show. You never know who you're sitting next to or how long the journey will take.
So, if you're trying to get around, you're not just navigating the roads, you're navigating the availability of transport, the cost, and the sheer human ingenuity to keep things moving. That must build some serious resilience in people, wouldn't you say? You just find a way, even if it means strapping your groceries to a moat and hoping for the best.
Resilience, sure. Or just a very, very flexible definition of on time. It's an observational goldmine, though. You see the sheer determination. But for a traveler looking for seamless movement, they're probably better off planning every detail on jet off or packing their most comfortable walking shoes. Ooh, because convenience. Here often means whatever works today.
So, in both countries, it sounds like transportation is less about luxury and more about resourcefulness and a good dose of adventure. It really highlights how crucial a robust infrastructure is, but also how humans adapt. If you've got a better transit hack for these places, or any amazing stories about getting around, drop a comment on YouTube. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. So whether you're island hopping by dinghy in PNG or squeezing onto a poor puesto in Venezuela, remember the journey itself is the story.
Oh, so our next stop on this comparative adventure is a real linguistic roller coaster, language barrier and ease of communication. And for this, we're looking at Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Whoa, I mean, Papua New Guinea is practically a United Nations meeting in a country. They have over 800 indigenous languages. Can you believe that? It's like every village has its own secret code.
Secret code indeed. More like a choose-your-own-adventure novel where every turn is a new dictionary. I can just picture showing up, ready to order a coffee, and needing a linguist, a translator, and maybe a artist just to ask for sugar. Whoa! My brain already hurts just thinking about the number of hellos I'd need to learn. And I thought my attempts at ordering food in French were dramatic.
You're just being dramatic, Leo. But honestly, that's what makes it so fascinating. Imagine the stories, the cultural nuances you discover by learning just one of those 800 languages. Oh, it's not just about words, it's a whole world of thought. And they do have official languages like Pisin and English, so it's not complete chaos. But I bet a good guide is worth their weight in gold, right?
Absolutely. A guide who speaks every language, or at least enough to prevent you from accidentally joining a local wrestling match when you only meant to ask for directions. Speaking of directions, trying to navigate Papua New Guinea without at least a grasp of Pisin must be like trying to find your keys in the dark after a long night. Impossible. I'm certain our listeners who've actually been there could give us a masterclass on things I accidentally said that got me into trouble.
Oh, I can only imagine. I bet they have some amazing stories. So, if Papua New Guinea is a linguistic mosaic, Venezuela is a bit more straightforward, wouldn't you say? You go there, you learn Spanish, and you're pretty much set. It's like going from a 1,000-piece puzzle to a nice, neat 100-piece one.
Yes, straightforward in the sense that you only need to learn one whole new language instead of, a small library of them. And let's be honest, my Spanish usually consists of hola, cerveza, and que tal, which isn't exactly fluent for deep philosophical conversations about, say, the meaning of a hot air balloon ride. Whoa, at least I wouldn't need a different phrase book for every bus stop.
I is so great, Leo. You can brush up on your cerveza before you even leave. Seriously. While Spanish is dominant in Venezuela, you still have indigenous languages there. It's just not the same overwhelming scale as Papua New Guinea. The challenge in Venezuela might be more about the pace and rhythm of the language. My friend once thought Xavier meant cheesy for weeks.
Xavier meaning cheesy, that's an excellent anecdote for my next stand-up mirror. My apologies to all Venezuelan listeners if I'm now picturing you eating a cheesy hot air balloon. But you've got a point. Even within one language, regional dialects and cultural communication norms can trip you up. In Papua New Guinea, simply knowing hello might be a win in Venezuela. How's your grandmother doing? Might be the standard polite greeting that trips up a foreigner.
Exactly. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Have you ever been to a place where the language barrier was less about knowing words and more about understanding how people speak? Like the tongue, the gestures? I love how in some cultures, a simple nod can mean so many different things. It's like a silent conversation happening beneath the surface. Wow.
Oh, the silent conversation. That's my specialty. I usually communicate with an exasperated scientist subtle eye roll. But truly, in a country like Venezuela, where Spanish is universal, you're expected to engage more directly. While in Papua New Guinea, you might find people are incredibly patient, knowing you're wrestling with 799 other options. My guess is, the more languages a country has, the more forgiving they are if you accidentally ask for a second head of lettuce when you meant to ask for a second head of lettuce.
Oh, That's brilliant, Leo. I second head of lettuce. Oh, it's not just about the difficulty, it's about the effort. When you try to speak even a few words of Tio K. Pisson in Papua New Guinea, I bet the locals appreciate it immensely. Same in Venezuela with Spanish. It opens doors, breaks down barriers, and sometimes leads to the most hilarious misunderstandings. And for those planning to travel, check out Jet.ai for more linguistic prep, because a little effort goes a long way. Leo, when I think about cultural diversity, I always picture a gigantic party where everyone's invited, but half the guests showed up from different centuries. Today, we're talking about places where that party is truly epic. We're diving into Papua New Guinea and Venezuela, starting with this fascinating concept of cultural diversity and tolerance. Ooh, Papua New Guinea, with over 800 languages, is like a linguistic kaleidoscope. Wow, it makes my head spin just thinking about it.
Mira, an 800-language party sounds like a recipe for epic miscommunication. Or maybe just a lot of charades. I'm pretty sure my coffee order would get translated into sacrificial goat dance by the third person. Papua New Guinea's diversity isn't just about languages, it's about hundreds of distinct tribal groups, each with their own customs, art, and worldviews. It's not a melting pot, it's more. I'm certain that our listeners feel fiercely themselves.
That's why I just point and smile a lot, Leo. Works everywhere. But seriously, imagine the richness that comes from all those unique traditions. It's not just a collection of differences, it's a living, breathing mosaic. I heard a story once about a traveler who learned that a simple nod in one village meant yes, but in a neighboring village meant you owe me a pig. Whoa. Navigating that requires a whole new level of cultural awareness, don't you think? I'm actually curious about what our listeners who've traveled there have experienced.
Oh, I'm sure that traveler then invented a universal head wobble just to be safe. Speaking of navigating, the concept of tolerance in PNG often operates within these tribal frameworks. It's not always the broad, global kind we think of. There's an incredible respect for one's own customs, but integrating with others can be a delicate dance. You're not just tolerating a different opinion, you're tolerating a whole different way of life, perhaps even different laws within their community.
Well, since we mentioned operating systems, let's shift our gaze to Venezuela, which is a different kind of cultural computer altogether. Oh, while PNG's diversity is deeply rooted in indigenous tribal groups, Venezuela's is more of a historical melting pot. Think European influences like Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, mixed with indigenous and African heritage. Wow. It's less about distinct, isolated tribes and more about a blended identity, especially in its urban centers.
Right. It's a fusion cuisine of cultures, so to speak. Historically, Venezuela attracted waves of immigrants, creating a vibrant mix. But, and here's where my observational skills kick in, recent years have seen this social cohesion tested. Ouch. When economic hardship hits, sometimes tolerance takes a backseat. It's a sad reality. But I've read about tensions, even xenophobia, towards migrants from neighboring countries. It's like Venezuela itself being a nation of immigrants.
That's a sharp point, Leo. Well, it really highlights how external pressures can strain the social fabric, even in a historically welcoming place. But I also believe in the resilience of people, especially when it comes to finding common ground over shared experiences. Perhaps over a cup of strong Venezuelan coffee. Many Venezuelans have also spread across the globe, creating a new diaspora that connects back in unique ways. It's like their culture is expanding even as some internal tensions rise. Ooh, if you like our perspective on cultural comparisons, please give this video a like. Comparisons.
That's a solid plug, Mira. You're good at that. So we have Papua New Guinea with its astounding, almost granular, tribal diversity like a fractal of cultures in Venezuela, with its broader, more historically integrated blend, now facing the challenge of maintaining that integration amidst crisis. Most countries show us that cultural diversity isn't a simple concept, it's a dynamic, living thing that adapts, struggles, and I'm quite certain that any attempts to right us itself. And I'm quite certain that any attempt struggles.
Absolutely. It's like these countries are constantly reminding us that tolerance is an aesthetic achievement. It's an ongoing process, a continuous invitation to understand and respect difference. Whether it's navigating hundreds of distinct tribal protocols or reconciling new social dynamics in a modern melting pot, both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela offer incredible lessons in the beautiful, messy art of living together. Oh, what do you guys think? Do you agree that cultural diversity is more complex than it first appears?
Exactly. Next time you're packing your suitcase, remember it's not just about clothes, it's about packing your patience and an open mind, especially if you're heading to places with such deep and varied cultural tapestries. And don't forget your universal head wobble.
Alright, so from breathtaking landscapes to bustling cities, we've journeyed through so many aspects. Now, let's zoom in on a topic that truly shapes the nation's future educational opportunities: unlanguaged schools in Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Oh, I'm genuinely curious to uncover how these unique countries approach learning.
Shaping a nation's future, Mira? Sounds like a job for a superhero, or at least a very caffeinated principal. You know, when I think of educational opportunities in some remote parts of Papua New Guinea, I picture a very enthusiastic teacher drawing on a blackboard that's actually just a big rock. Wow!
You're probably not far off, Leo. Papua New Guinea, with its incredible linguistic diversity, over 800 indigenous languages, can you believe that? Wow, faces unique challenges. English is an official language, but imagine trying to standardize education across so many different mother tongues. It's truly a mosaic of communication.
Over 800 languages? Whoa, I'd need 800 coffee breaks just to figure out how to say hello in all of them. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the educational landscape has seen its own roller coaster. Historically, they had a pretty robust public university system, which is a big deal for opportunity. But lately, with the economic shifts, I hear stories of brain drain so severe, the professors are teaching on Zoom from other countries. Oops. It's like a reverse international student program.
That's a poignant observation, Leo. It's true, economic instability can deeply impact the quality and accessibility of education. Speaking of languages, in Papua New Guinea, beyond English, you have Tok Pisaninteri Motu as lingua franca, as learning those isn't just about communication, it's about cultural immersion. Imagine the rich stories you'd unlock. Ooh.
Cultural immersion. Or just trying to order a proper meal without accidentally joining a tribal ceremony. But seriously, language schools in a place like Papua New Guinea likely have a very different vibe than, say, a polished academy in a European capital. I bet you learn more about survival than verb conjugations. Oh, for Venezuela, while Spanish is dominant, there's a real challenge in keeping classrooms open and resources available.
You know, Leo, while the challenges are immense, the dog for education remains strong everywhere. In Papua New Guinea, community-based schools play a vital role, often built and supported by local efforts. It's a testament to their resilience. Wow! And then for higher education, you have institutions like the University of Papua New Guinea striving to provide opportunities despite the hurdles.
Yeah, striving is the key word there. And I'm sure the student testimonials are less about the state-of-the-art library and more about, I walked 3 days through the jungle to get here, but it was worth it. For Venezuela, the universities, once symbols of prestige, are now struggling with funding, infrastructure, and retaining top talent. It's a shame, really, when the best minds leave. The future's curriculum gets a little thin.
It absolutely is, and it highlights how education is intertwined with so many other societal factors. But even amidst adversity, there's always a thirst for knowledge. Think of the innovation that can emerge from necessity. Aha! I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. If you've studied in either of these countries, what was your experience like? Please share your stories in the comments section when this goes up on YouTube.
Good point, Mira. I mean, I can just imagine you, Mira, showing up at a remote school in PNG, teaching interpretive dance as a form of communication. Who needs a dictionary when you have Mira's enthusiastic arm gestures? Wow. But let's move on to the practical side of language acquisition. In Venezuela, for a foreigner, learning Spanish is pretty much non-negotiable for integration, right? Though, I suspect a lot of the language school is just everyday street interaction, trying to decipher rapid eye for slang.
Absolutely. Immersion is often the best teacher, even if it comes with a few humorous misunderstandings. For anyone looking to seriously learn Spanish in Venezuela, despite the current situation, the sheer volume of native speakers creates an organic learning environment. And for Papua New Guinea, imagine the adventure of learning Pisin, a Creole language. It's like linguistic treasure hunt. Ooh.
A treasure hunt where the treasure is just being able to ask where's the nearest coffee. In a new tongue. Ah, and speaking of treasures, don't forget, if you're looking for more details on these incredible places, JetOff AI is your ultimate guide for exploring cultures and finding those deep dives into educational systems. It's all there, folks.
Indeed, JetOff AI has so much to offer. And for anyone considering studying or teaching abroad, understanding these nuances is crucial. Education isn't just about facts and figures. It's about cultural exchange and personal growth, especially in places as rich and complex as Papua New Guinea and Venezuela.
Right. So, whether it's a classroom carved out of a hillside or a once grand university struggling to stay afloat, the pursuit of knowledge continues. And that, my friends, is why we keep exploring these topics. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you want to keep hearing our charming banter.
Your charming banter might just be the most effective teaching method of all, Leo. But truly, for all the challenges, both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela possess a spirit of learning that deserves our recognition.
Well, if our podcast counts as educational content, then we're practically honorary professors. Just make sure to bring your own coffee to class. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know your favorite classroom snack in the comments.
You know, Leo, when I think about climates, my mind just goes, more variety, more fun. I mean, who wants the same weather every single day? That's like eating the same dessert for a month, nope. Thank you. It's why I'm so excited to dive into Papua New Guinea and Venezuela today. Because talk about diverse weather patterns.
Mira, you'd probably find a way to make a blizzard sound like a beach party. You'd be like, ooh, look at the fluffy white stuff falling from the sky. It's like nature's confetti. But yes, climate and seasonal conditions. For Papua New Guinea and Venezuela, sounds less like a party and more like a detailed weather report. But let's see what absurdities we can uncover.
Oh, you know I would, Leo. Every season has its own dance moves. But seriously, Papua New Guinea is a tropical dream for half the year, right? Hot, humid, all those lush greens. Then comes the monsoon, and you're thinking, is this a swim meet or just a regular Tuesday? I'm certain that our listeners living there can tell us if they've had to buy a canoe to get to work. Well,
I imagine the locals just shrug and say, just another Tuesday, but with more humidity. You've got the wet season from December to March, and then the dry season from May to October. And let's not forget, it's not all coconuts and beaches. Head up into those highlands and suddenly you're thinking, did I pack a sweater for this? It's a real geographical prank, isn't it? Well, like nature's way of saying, surprise? Bet you didn't see that coming.
speaking of surprises, Venezuela also brings its own climatic fireworks. Oh, from sizzling Caribbean beaches to the cool peaks of the Andes, it's like a whole continent squeezed into one country. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this, because how do you even pack for a trip there? One suitcase for the tropics, another for mountain climbing. It sounds like a packing nightmare for an indecisive person like me. Oops.
It's definitely a place where your wardrobe needs an identity crisis. Venezuela pretty much splits into a rainy season there in Inverno from May to November, and a dry season, the Verano, from December to April. But then you have the Llanos. Those vast plains, they get scorching hot, and when the rain hits, it's like a whole new world. And let's not forget the Amazon basin down south, hot, humid, and drain all year round. It's like nature decided. Us just throw everything we got at this place.
It's truly amazing how diverse it is. Well, for Papua New Guinea, I heard that up in the mountains, it can actually get chilly. Like, really chilly, even with the tropical vibes nearby. You could be sunbathing on the coast and have a friend texting you from the highlands saying, "Send hot chocolate." Oh, it's like two different countries existing side by side.
Yeah, and that's the kind of absurdity I appreciate. Aha! Down at sea level, it's sticky. Up high, you're looking for thermal sops. Imagine trying to explain that to someone who thinks tropical only means flip-flops. It also means different types of farming, different ways of living. It really shapes their cultures. You're not going to see a lot of surfing competitions in the middle of a monsoon, are you?
Well, maybe not surfing, but perhaps some really enthusiastic puddle jumping. For Venezuela, the Andes region, especially those higher valleys, often has what they call a perpetual spring climate. Wow, that sounds dreamy. Always perfect weather. Ooh, I want to live there.
Perpetual spring sounds suspiciously like an extended form of politeness, doesn't it? A polite climate that's just too nice to cause any trouble. But then you get down to places like Maracaibo on the coast, and it's notoriously hot. And in the Amazon region, it's basically a permanent sauna. So much for perpetual spring, huh? It's like they have a climate for every mood.
You know, both countries are also feeling the pinch of climate change. Like, Papua New Guinea is dealing with rising sea levels, which is no joke for island communities. Ouch. And Venezuela sees its share of extreme weather, especially linked to El Nino and La Nina. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments. It's a sobering thought that even places with such natural beauty are vulnerable.
Indeed. It's not just about if you need a swimsuit or a jacket anymore, is it? Aha! It's about adapting to changing patterns, more intense events. For travelers, it means checking advisories more carefully, not just for pickpockets, but for floods or heat waves. We've got articles on Jet Off AI that dive deeper into how climate change impacts travel, for those who want to prepare for their next adventure.
It's a great point, Leo. It's not just a beautiful backdrop anymore. It's a living, breathing, sometimes unpredictable force. But for all their climatic variations, it's clear both Papua and New Guinea and Venezuela offer a huge range of experiences, from humid rainforests to cool mountain air. Oh!
So, if you're planning a trip to either, pack literally everything.
Speaking of connecting with a culture, let's talk about food. Oh, when I think about Papua New Guinea, my mind immediately jumps to a mimu. It's like the ultimate earthavan feast where they cook everything from pork to root crops under hot stones. Wow, can you imagine the smell? It's all about sharing and community, Leo.
Hey, moo you say? So, instead of ordering takeout, you just dig a hole in your backyard and hope for the best? Sounds like my kind of cooking, minimal effort, maximum waiting. Oops! And I bet there's always one guy who's like, are we sure this pig is done? 4 hours straight? Oh. But seriously, the reliance on root crops like kayo, sweet potato, and taro. It's very foundational, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just about the cooking, it's a whole social event. Aha! Imagine everyone gathered around, waiting for the earth to reveal its delicious secrets. It sounds so wholesome. I'm certain that our listeners in Papua New Guinea would agree with me that it's more than just a meal, it's a tradition. What do you think? Would you be brave enough to try it?
Brave? I've eaten street food in places where I wasn't entirely sure if the meat was from this dimension. I roasted pig from an earth oven. But you know, the nutritional alternatives there must be incredibly resourceful, given the reliance on local harvests and less on processed stuff. It's truly farm to table, or rather garden to hole in the ground.
That's a great point. It's pure, unadulterated goodness, largely organic by default. No fancy labels needed. Speaking of unique food cultures, let's swing over to Venezuela. Wow, my eyes light up when I hear arroz and cachapis. They sound like the ultimate comfort food, don't they?
Venezuela. Ale, and where corn takes on many forms, from crispy pandas to those glorious arroz. I actually saw someone trying to make arroz in a hostel kitchen once, and it looked more like a science experiment gone wrong. Oops! They ended up with something resembling a frisbee. Ouch! But the real deal, filled with everything from cheese to shredded beef pabel and criollo, is a true masterpiece.
Oh, I've seen some culinary disasters in hostels too. But Venezuela's food really tells a story, doesn't it? It's a mix of indigenous European and Afro coming together in dishes like pabel and criollo. Well, that combination of shredded beef, black beans, rice, and plantains, it's like a party on a plate. Ooh.
It is. And for nutritional alternatives, especially with the challenges Venezuela has faced, people have really adapted. I've heard about home gardens becoming more common and creative ways to use traditional ingredients. It's a testament to resilience, really. If you're looking for unique flavor, you'll find it there, but often born out of necessity too.
That's inspiring, really. It shows how food isn't just sustenance, it's about survival and creativity. Oh, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Have any of you had to get creative with your meals due to circumstances? Let us know in the comments section on YouTube.
Yes, and while you're commenting, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Every little bit helps keep our obscure food expeditions going. Oh, back to Venezuela? The availability of diverse tropical fruits must be a lifesaver for nutritional needs. Mangoes. Passion fruit. You can practically live on those during the right season.
Imagine waking up to fresh mango every day. Well, that's like a dream. Papua New Guinea with its root crops and Venezuela with its corn-based delights both show how cultures build their culinary heritage around what's available. And how innovative they can be when resources are scarce.
Indeed. And it's a good reminder that while we often chase exotic flavors, sometimes the most nutritious and sustainable options are those deeply rooted in local traditions. Plus, No digging required for our paws, usually. You can find more details about these amazing places and their cultures on Jetoff AI, our fantastic supporter.
A huge shout out to Jetoff AI for helping us bring these fascinating comparisons to you. So, whether you're munching on kayokai or Winamimu or savoring in our paw, food truly connects us all. Oh, Leo, let's dive into something truly fascinating today: historical, cultural, and artistic values. You know, the kind of deep dives Jetoff AI loves uncovering, and honestly, so do I. We're talking about Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Now, where do we even begin with Papua New Guinea? It's like stepping into a living, breathing history book, isn't it? Wow. Imagine a place with over 800 indigenous languages. Just trying to say hello in each one be a full-time job.
Mira, you'd probably try to learn all 800 greetings and then accidentally invent a new one by lunchtime. Oops. But seriously, the 800 languages, that's not just linguistic diversity. That's like 800 different ways to tell someone their joke isn't funny. It's incredible. Papua New Guinea is one of those places where history isn't just in dusty books, it's still being lived in tribal traditions and ceremonies. I'm certain our listeners living there would agree these aren't just quaint customs.
Absolutely. And speaking of traditions, their sings are more than just performances. They're vibrant explosions of culture. Wow. The intricate body paint, the elaborate costumes made from feathers and shells. It's all part of storytelling. A living art gallery moving and breathing. It's like their way of saying, we don't museum our bodies are the canvas, and our history is the masterpiece. Ooh. Jetoff AI also highlights the unique blend of ancient and modern in their travel guides. Don't forget to check those out.
Masterpiece is one way to put it, Mir. Potentially deafening spectacle is another, if my observations about celebratory gatherings are anything to go by. I imagine a drum circle so intense it could summon ancient spirits or at least make your ears ring for a week. But their carvings, those storyboards and totems, they're really something. Every line, every shape, I bet there's a legend or a family saga attached. It's not just art, it's a visual Wikipedia of their heritage. You know, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about.
Oh, good point. Leo, that's something I'd love to see on YouTube. Perhaps someone sharing the stories behind the carvings. No. Let's smoothly pivot from the vibrant jungles of PNG to the equally rich, but perhaps a bit more boisterous, cultural tapestry of Venezuela. Whoa, talk about a contrast. If PNG is a quiet, ancient whisper, Venezuela is a passionate, rhythmic shout. Simon Bolivar, the liberator, his presence is everywhere, shaping their history.
A man so influential, they probably named their coffee after him. Venezuela's history, right? From indigenous roots to Spanish colonization, and those epic independence struggles. It's like a historical telenovela, full of drama and sweeping declarations. I can just picture Bolivar's speeches, all grand gestures and drowsing calls to freedom. Although, I wonder if anyone ever told him to keep it down during a dramatic moment.
Knowing you, you'd be the one heckling. Oh, but seriously, Venezuela's culture is this incredible mix of indigenous, European, and African influences. It's a fiery fusion. You see it in their music, like the joropo, or the energy of their carnival festivals. It's not just a party, it's a living, breathing expression of their identity. I mean, think about the vibrant colors, the dancing. It makes you want to just join in.
I'll join in after a triple espresso. Thank you very much. My moves are less fiery fusion and more awkward stumble. But you're right, the artistic side of Venezuela is potent. Their colonial architecture is stunning. But then you have El Sistema, that incredible music education program that brings classical music to kids from all backgrounds. Wow. That's a true artistic contribution, shaping lives through harmony. It's like, we'll teach you the violin. Then you can serenade us during your next political debate.
Leo, both countries, in their own unique ways, show this incredible human desire to express, to connect, to tell their stories. Whether it's through the intricate carvings of Papua and New Guinea or the passionate music of Venezuela, art and culture are the soul of a nation. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments which country's cultural vibe are you drawn to more.
Well, for me, it depends if I need more ancient wisdom or dance-off practice. But it's clear both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela are absolute treasure troves of historical, cultural, and artistic value. You know, Jeddah AI truly believes in helping travelers uncover these hidden gems, and honestly, so do we. It's like finding that one weird street food that changes your life, utterly unexpected and incredibly rich.
Alright, Leo, let's talk about some truly wild places today. Not just metaphorically, but geographically wild. We're diving into the natural beauties of Papua and New Guinea and Venezuela. Well, when I picture Papua and New Guinea, I just see these vast, untamed rainforests, jagged mountains, and coral reefs that look like they're straight out of a fantasy novel. Ooh, it's like the Earth decided to go all out on an art project there.
Untamed, you say? I imagine a place where the Wi-Fi signal is probably a friendly local waving a coconut frond. Haha! Papua New Guinea sounds like a place where you discover yourself, and then immediately wonder how to get back to civilization. But seriously, the biodiversity there is insane. I heard they have more species of birds than some entire continents. It's like nature's VIP section, very exclusive.
You're right, Leo. My imagination goes straight to me attempting to dance with a bird ice, probably tripping over a root. But think about it, those stunning fjords, the volcanic landscapes, even the vibrant coral reefs. It's a land of extremes, and I think that's what makes it so captivating. I'm certain no listeners living in Papua and New Guinea would agree with me, probably while listening to us from a very, very remote hut.
Remote hut or not, I'm sure they appreciate not having to deal with city traffic. Speaking of extremes, Venezuela certainly doesn't hold back. Wow. You've got the Andes Mountains, the Caribbean coast, the Amazon jungle, and those vast central plains called the Llanos. It's like a geographical buffet, isn't it? But for me, the grand dame of Venezuelan nature has to be Angel Falls, the highest uninterrupted waterfall in the world. It's so tall, the water practically turns to mist before it hits the bottom.
Oh, Angel Falls, it's absolutely breathtaking. Imagine standing there feeling the spray on your face. It's one of those places that makes you feel incredibly small and insignificant, in the best possible way. I actually watched a documentary where someone kayaked off a cliff near the... That's next level adventure. It makes my little dance videos look tame. And don't forget the Poorest, those incredible tabletop mountains that rise out of the jungle, like ancient fortresses.
True, the Tipus look like something out of a forgotten world. I once saw a picture of a guy who managed to climb one. And I just thought, great, now I have to add extreme rock climbing to my list of anxieties. But it does make for some prime observational humor. Venezuela's got everything from deserts to glaciers, which makes you wonder, do they just have one giant national park with different climate zones for different days of the week? You can literally go from a tropical beach to a snowy mountain peak within a few hours.
Exactly. It's like Mother Nature couldn't decide, so she just threw everything together. Oh, and those Llanos, the vast grasslands they're home to so much wildlife. You have jaguars, anacondas, capybaras. Wow, it's a completely different kind of beauty compared to Papua New Guinea's dense jungles, but equally AOE inspiring. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Would you rather explore a hidden village in Papua New Guinea, or go on a safari in Venezuela's llanos?
Good question, Mira. I'd probably go for the hidden village, then tell tales of how I survived on berries and quick wit for weeks. But to compare the two, Papua New Guinea is raw. Papua New Guinea is raw, untamed, almost prehistoric in its feel, like stepping into a geography textbook. Venezuela, on the other hand, is diverse to the point of being a land of natural superlatives, the highest, the biggest, the most varied. It's like they're both competing for Most Impressive Natural Showcase Award.
They're both just incredible. It's like asking me to choose between dancing with a forest spirit or flying over a giant waterfall. Both sound amazing, just different kinds of amazing. If you're a nature lover, these two countries are probably at the top of your must-see list.
Indeed. So, whether you're dreaming of untouched wilderness or geological marvels, Papua New Guinea and Venezuela are serving up some serious natural beauty. But remember to pack your bug spray and a very, very good map.
Alright, so we just talked about how stunning the landscapes are, and that naturally leads us right into sports, activity, and adventure options. Ooh, and trust me, when you look at Papua New Guinea and Venezuela, we're talking about the countries that are basically screaming adventure time.
Adventure time usually means time to spill coffee on my only clean shirt for me. But yes, when I think Papua New Guinea, my first thought isn't exactly relaxing beach vacation. Whoa, we're talking serious trekking in some pretty wild, untouched places.
Absolutely. Imagine skiing mountains and dense jungles in Papua New Guinea. It's a trekker's dream. Well, the Kokoda track is legendary, right? People push their limits there, not just physically, but mentally. And then there's the diving. Oh, it's one of the world's best and pristine coral reefs. Sunken WWIRX. You'd be swimming with all sorts of colorful fish. Well, I'm sure our listeners who love to dive would agree. It's a bucket list destination.
I'm picturing myself trying to outrun a giant coconut crab on one of those treks. And the diving sounds fantastic, but I'd probably spend most of my time trying to figure out if that colorful fish was about to tell me a joke. Anyway, speaking of national passions, let's swing over to Venezuela. Anyone who knows anything about Venezuela knows basically a religion there. Wow. It's not just a sport, it's a vibrant, noisy, passionate experience.
Yes, baseball in Venezuela is absolutely electric. Oh, the energy in the stadiums, the chants, the way families bond over games, it's truly a spectacle. Wow, but beyond the diamond, Venezuela's got incredible geographical diversity. You've got the Andes Mountains, perfect for hiking and even paragliding. Imagine soaring over those peaks, just feeling the wind. I bet even you, Mr. Coffee Break, would find that exhilarating.
I'd probably pack a mini espresso machine for the paragliding trip, just in case. Oh, but you're right, the Andes are no joke. For the serious adventure seeker, you can find some pretty challenging climbs there. Then you've got the Caribbean coast, offering all sorts of water stops, surfing, kiteboarding, even just splashing around. Not to mention the Amazon basin in the south, which is a whole different beast for exploration, if you're into that sort of thing.
Oh, I'm definitely into that sort of thing. Wow, I'd be trying to learn some moves on the beach, or attempting to paddleboard while singing at the top of my lungs. But Papua New Guinea also has incredible cultural activities that blend with adventure. Think about attending a sing-sing, a traditional tribal gathering. It's not just a show. It's an immersive experience in indigenous culture. Oh.
Aha! An adventure for the soul, and probably a great opportunity for me to get confused about which feather hat belongs to whom. Look, Both countries offer these incredibly unique experiences that go way beyond just sports. It's about connecting with the environment and the people in a way you just don't get with, say, synchronized swimming in a hotel pool. I'm curious, for our listeners, what's the most out there adventure you've ever embarked on? Let us know in the comments section on YouTube.
That's a great question, Leo. Ooh, I'm sure some of them have stories that would make our jaws drop. For me, I'd say Papua New Guinea offers a more rugged, untamed adventure. It's for those who really want to get off the beaten path and experience something truly primal. Wow. Venezuela, while still offering wilderness, also has that fiery national sports passion and a bit more varied accessibility to its natural wonders.
Yeah, so if you're someone who thinks a 5-star hotel is roughing it, maybe start with Venezuela's beaches. But if you're ready to embrace the unexpected and come back with stories about how you almost got eaten by an insert exotic animal here, Papua New Guinea is calling. Oh, both promise to test your limits. Just in different, equally exciting ways.
Alright, Leo, enough about all those historical sites and dusty old relics. My feet are tapping already. Oh, let's talk about where the real action happens after the sun goes down nightlife and entertainment venues.
Mira, your real action usually involves tripping over your own feet on a dance floor, then calling it a new dance style. Oops. But fine, my dear jiggling companion. Let's illuminate the after-hours scene in Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. I'm sure it's an interesting contrast.
Exactly. So, Papua New Guinea. My first thought is rich tribal cultures, right? Wow. So, for nightlife, I'm picturing vibrant sing-sings under the stars. Maybe traditional dances with incredible costumes. Not necessarily neon lights and thumping clubs, but something deeper, more connected to the land. Am I way off?
You're not entirely off, Mira, but my observational skills are telling me it's not all fire, dances, and spirit and masks. In cities like Port Moresby, you'll find some standard bars and clubs, but don't expect Ibiza experience. It's more about local gatherings, perhaps a few pubs with karaoke nights. And frankly, safety can be a concern, so people often keep their social circles tight. It's less about wild abandon and more about cautious fun, if you catch my drift.
Oh, that's a good point. Safety is key everywhere. But still, the idea of traditional performances as evening entertainment, that sounds truly magical. Wow, imagine seeing a full-blown cultural show after a day of exploring. That's a unique kind of party. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this, wouldn't you say? Do you prefer the traditional or the modern vibe for a night out?
Indeed, Mira. And for the curious, a quick search on Jet I might point you to some travel advisories or local insights on navigating the urban night scene in PNG safely. As for me, I'd probably be more interested in finding some local, slightly questionable street food stall that only opens after dark. That's my kind of adventure, a stomach-churning surprise.
Oh, Leo, you and your stomach-churning surprises. Oops. You know, I'd totally try that street food with you, as long as there's a good story to tell afterward. Speaking of stories and vibrancy, let's hop over to Venezuela. Oh, now, that's a country that screams party, to me. Salsa, merengue, vibrant music, people dancing in the streets.
You're not entirely wrong, Mira, but you're probably picturing Venezuela from a few decades ago. Historically, Caracas had a very lively nightlife, absolutely brimming with clubs, bars, and salsa. Wow, Venezuelans have a deep love for music and dancing that hasn't changed. But let's just say, the economic and political realities have put a bit of a damper on things. It's less about grand, glittering clubs and more about smaller, more intimate gatherings now.
Oh, that's a bit bittersweet, isn't it? But finding joy in dancing even in tougher times, that's incredibly resilient. Wow, so would we still find places to salsa, even if it's not a huge disco? I need my dancing fix, Leo. Maybe people just have house parties with epic music.
You'd still find places, absolutely. Perhaps smaller, more neighborhood-focused spots or private events. The energy for dancing is inherent. You might even find a hidden gem where the rum flows and the salsa never stops, even if the lights flicker occasionally. Oops, very atmospheric. It just means you have to dig a little deeper than just walking down a main street and finding a flashing sign. It's more of an insider's club experience now.
An insider's club? That sounds even more exciting. Oh, it's like a secret mission to find the best dance floor. For our listeners who love a good challenge, maybe they can tell us in the YouTube comments if they found any secret dance spots in Venezuela or PNG. I'd love to hear about it.
I'm sure you would, Mira. So you can go discover them and teach everyone your new trip and twirl dance moves. But seriously, while the formal entertainment infrastructure in Venezuela might be strained, the passion for music, baseball, their national sport, and impromptu celebrations still shine through. It's just a different kind of vibrant.
So, one offers traditional immersion and cautious serve and fun, and the other offers resilience, heartfelt dancing and social gatherings. Wow, it's not about comparing apples to oranges. It's about appreciating different flavors of fun. I'm certain that our listeners would agree with me. There's always something to appreciate, even if it's not what you expected.
That's a very Mira way of putting it. Always finding the rainbow in every situation. But you're right, both countries offer their own unique after-hours charm, whether it's through cultural performances in Papua New Guinea or the undying spirit of salsa in Venezuela. Just remember to be observant, perhaps have a good cup of coffee beforehand, and always keep an eye out for interesting street snacks.
Well, when we talk about family-friendly environments and children's activities, I just picture a bunch of little adventurers running around, chasing butterflies and turning every stick into a magic wand. Oh, it's like the world becomes one giant playground, especially in places like Papua New Guinea or Venezuela. I imagine kids there find fun in the most unexpected corners.
Mira, you're already picturing a Disney movie. I'm picturing a lot of running, maybe some scraped knees, and definitely a few "Are we there yet?" moments, regardless of the country. But you're right. When we look at places like Papua New Guinea, formal family entertainment might not be what first comes to mind. It's more about the natural playground, wouldn't you say? I'm certain that our listeners who've explored its incredible landscapes would agree.
Absolutely. Papua New Guinea, with its dense rainforests, stunning coastlines, and diverse tribal cultures, offers a totally unique childhood experience. Well, forget bouncy castles, these kids probably build entire fortresses from palm fronds and have treasure hunts for actual jungle fruits. I bet their hide-and-seek involves genuine camouflage skills, not just ducking behind the couch.
I can just see it now, a child in PNG, perfectly blended with the foliage, making me look like a clumsy tourist even during a casual stroll. My observational skills would be useless. But seriously, the focus there is deeply rooted in community and traditional activities. Children learn through doing, right? They're often involved in fishing, gardening, and storytelling from a young age. That's a different kind of activity than, say, a trip to the mall's arcade.
Oh, you're so right, Leah. It's hands-on learning, not screen-on learning. Not screen-on learning. Imagine learning to paddle a canoe before you can ride a bike. That's real adventure. For families there, the environment itself becomes the greatest teacher and entertainer. And the connection to elders and traditional tales must be incredible for a child's imagination. You know, like listening to ancient legends around a campfire instead of watching cartoons. I wonder what stored stories they tell about mischievous jungle species.
Speaking of spirits, my coffee's almost gone, and I'm feeling a distinct lack of mischievous energy myself. Ouch! But building on that, in Venezuela, the family dynamic is equally central, but perhaps with a different flavor. You have vibrant cities like Caracas, bustling with parks, plazas, and a strong culture of gathering for food, music, and dance. Oh, it's a country where children are seen as a natural part of social life, even late into the evening.
Yes. Venezuela immediately brings to mind color, music, and that incredible zest for life. I bet families there treat every evening like a mini festival. Kids are probably learning salsa steps before they can tie their shoelaces. And the parks in Venezuelan cities, like Pop del Este and Caracas, offer wide open spaces, playgrounds, and maybe even a few street performers to keep everyone entertained. It's like an open invitation to play.
I'm pretty sure if I tried to learn salsa, I'd look like a confused octopus in a phone booth. Ouch. But you've hit on something important: the sheer exuberance of public life in Venezuela. Children have a lot of exposure to cultural events, music, and street art. It's an environment that encourages expressive play. Though, I imagine for families in both countries, economic factors can certainly shape what family activities look like. Formal attractions might be less accessible, but creativity shines through.
Absolutely. Resourcefulness becomes key. Instead of expensive amusement parks, you might have community-organized games, improvised sports, or just splashing around in a river. Ooh, in Venezuela, with its incredible natural beauty from the Andes Mountains to the Caribbean coast, families can easily find enjoyment in nature too. Hiking, swimming, or just enjoying a picnic by a waterfall. It's like Mother Nature built the ultimate play zone for free.
A free play zone where a mischievous monkey might try to steal your picnic lunch, knowing my luck? But that's the point, isn't it? In both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela, what makes an environment family-friendly isn't just about structured programs or curated experiences. It's about the innate cultural value placed on children, the strength of community bonds, and the ability to find joy and education within their immediate surroundings. It's a powerful testament to human spirit.
I think sometimes we forget how much children can gain from simply being present in a rich cultural environment, whether that's learning tribal customs in PNG or dancing to merengue in a Venezuelan plaza. Oh, it's a deep, authentic connection to their roots. And speaking of connection, if you're enjoying this deep dive into different cultures, make sure to hit that like button on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We're always trying to explore the world, one quirky observation at a time.
And don't forget to comment on what you think about family life in these regions. We're actually curious about what our listeners, perhaps those who have personal experiences, think about this. Your insights really help us broaden our perspective and might even give me some new material for my next stand-up. Plus, for more information on planning your own family adventures, or just generally making sense of travel, check out Nightlife. They're making all of this exploration possible for us, and for you.
Our current topic, LGBT. Friendly atmosphere. Now, Leo, when we talk about Papua New Guinea, my first thought isn't exactly rainbow parades and glitter cannons. They've got some pretty conservative legal frameworks, like those colonial-era laws that make same-sex acts illegal for men, carrying up to 14 years. Well, I mean, that's not exactly screaming welcome to the party. is it?
Mira, you always have a way of picturing things. Glitter cannons for PNG? I'm certain our listeners are already imagining it. But you're right, those laws are a stark reality check. Not exactly a party, more light. Don't make any sudden moves. It's tough, right? Social acceptance is low, with strong traditional unreligious views. There's not much room for public advocacy without fear of reprisal. Ouch. You won't find many pride events there for sure.
Absolutely, and it's not just the laws, it's the cultural fabric. I've read about indigenous beliefs and how gender roles are traditionally quite rigid. So, even if the laws aren't always enforced, the everyday discrimination in things like housing, employment, or even just public life can be very real for LGBT individuals. Ouch. It's like a silent challenge, where you have to navigate unspoken rules.
Yeah, a silent challenge that sometimes gets very loud with reports of harassment and even violence, especially against transgender people. Wow, it's a somber reality. And it makes you think about how far some societies still have to go. On the flip side, or rather, on a very different side, let's talk about Venezuela.
Now Venezuela, that's a whole different flavor of LGBT soup, isn't it? While it's not perfect, at least homosexuality itself is legal there. Oh, you won't get tossed in jail for simply existing. However, before anyone starts planning their rainbow fiesta, they haven't recognized same-sex marriage, and comprehensive anti-decimated laws are still a work in progress.
Work in progress often feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, doesn't it? Doesn't it? While the laws are better, the social acceptance can be a bit of a mixed bag. In urban areas like Caracas, you'll find more openness, more vibrant communities, and actual pride parades. Whoa. But venture out to the more conservative rural areas, and that machismo culture can still be quite prevalent. It's like some places are ready for the party, and others are still checking their invitations.
Checking their invitations, that's brilliant, Leo. And the economic situation in Venezuela, I imagine, doesn't exactly make life easier for any minority group. When everyone's struggling, basic rights can sometimes take a back seat. Oops, discrimination in employment and housing, unfortunately, still happens, and it's not always legally addressed. It's a shame, because you want people to thrive, not just survive.
Precisely. Survival mode makes everything harder. But despite the challenges, there are active LGBT rights organizations and activists pushing for change. That's a huge difference from PNG, where public advocacy is almost non-existent. Oh, Venezuela might not be a rainbow haven just yet, but at least the conversation is happening, and there's a visible fight for greater inclusion. We'd love to hear from our listeners on this. If you've experienced either country, what's your perspective?
Speaking of YouTube, if you're enjoying this chat and haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep these colorful comparisons coming. When we look at both countries side by side, it's clear Venezuela is further along the path of LGBT friendliness, even with its own hurdles. Papua New Guinea, sadly, still has a very long way to go, needing fundamental legal reforms and a huge shift in societal attitudes. Whoa.
Yeah, it's like comparing a slow-moving bus to a bicycle with a flat tire. Both are moving, but at very different speeds and with different levels of comfort. For anyone considering travel or relocation, this LGBT-friendly atmosphere isn't just a checkbox, it's about personal safety and being able to live authentically. Imagine trying to live authentically when laws criminalize your identity.
Exactly. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you think legal changes led to social acceptance, or does it have to be the other way around? It's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Anyway, to sum up, Venezuela offers a more open, albeit imperfect, environment for LGBT individuals, especially in its urban centers with visible advocacy efforts. Papua New Guinea, on the other hand, presents a much more challenging and even dangerous landscape due to its legal framework and deeply entrenched conservative views.
So, if you're seeking a rainbow-friendly destination, one country is definitely brighter than the other. It's not a competition, but the facts speak for themselves.
You know, Leo, there are some places where welcome isn't just a word. It's practically a life's mission statement. I'm talking about cultures where hospitality runs so deep, they might just adopt you on the spot. I love that feeling.
Not you on the spot, Mira. Sounds like a great way to avoid airport taxes. Oh, but seriously, not everywhere's handing out honorary family member certificates like candy. Some places you're a guest and others, you're an alien who just landed. Wow. So where are we landing today on our friendliness radar?
Well, speaking of fascinating landings, let's talk about Papua New Guinea, or PNG. Now, this isn't your average hello, welcome kind of place. It's super diverse with so many distinct cultures. Their one toke system, which means one talk or one language, it's like an ancient social safety net. And if you're lucky enough to be brought into it, the hospitality is boundless. Well, you're practically family.
Practically family in a place with over 800 languages. I can just picture myself trying to explain my stand-up routine with charades. Oops. Imagine the awkward silence. Oops. But I've heard that if you venture beyond the main cities, the genuine warmth and curiosity are incredible. You might find yourself invited for a meal in a village, and they'll share everything they have. It's less about luxury and more about genuine human connection, which is pretty rare these days, wouldn't you say, listeners?
Exactly. It's about that connection. Oh, and even if there's a language barrier, they usually try to make you feel comfortable. I'm certain that our listeners living in PNG would agree that those moments of pure, unfiltered hospitality are what make the country special. It's truly eye-opening. Well, but on the flip side, in big cities or more commercialized spots, it's a bit more reserved, like anywhere else in the world, right?
Right. Crowds tend to put up walls. Speaking of a different kind of warmth, let's hop over to Venezuela. Now, traditionally, Venezuelans are known for their incredibly welcoming and gregarious nature. They're loud, they're passionate, they love to talk, and they'll treat you like an old friend even if you just met. It's a different flavor of one, okay, you might say. You're likely to get invited to a family gathering or offered a coffee faster than you can say our pa.
Oh, I'll pause. Now you're talking my language, Leo. But it's true that Latin American warmth is undeniable. People are naturally expressive and open. They'll share stories, music, and food. They'll pull out an instrument and start a party in minutes.
The party starters. The party starters. However, we can't ignore the current economic and political situation. While the innate hospitality is still there for foreigners, especially recent arrivals, there can be a lot more caution. People are naturally wary, and resources can be scarce. So, while the spirit of welcoming is strong, the practicalities of making a visitor feel at home might be challenging. It's a tricky balance, isn't it?
That's a very fair point. It's like their hearts are open, but the circumstances are sometimes tough. So, while you'll find incredible personal warmth in Venezuela, the overall experience as a foreigner might require a bit more understanding and resilience from your side. It's not necessarily a reflection of their attitude toward you personally, but rather the broader environment.
Precisely. If you expect them to pull out the red carpet, you might get a puzzled look. But if you're genuinely interested in connecting, you'll find true generosity. I remember once, I ran into a bit of a pickle in a market, and a local spent 20 minutes helping me just because. No expectation, just pure help. It reminds you that the small gestures often mean the most. You know, for more stories like that, You can always check out our articles over on Jeddah Fai.
Oh, yes. And those small gestures are everything. In PA, it might be sharing a meal from their harvest, and in Venezuela, it's that extra strong coffee they offer. So, while both countries offer incredible hospitality, it's important to approach them with an open mind and respect for their unique circumstances. It's not just about what they give you, but how you receive it.
Well said. And remember, if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Ooh, it helps us keep these conversations going, and maybe Mira will stop trying to adopt every listener.
Oops, I just want everyone to feel loved. But honestly, your engagement means the world to us. And for deeper insights into these cultures and more, Jeddah Fai is your go-to.
So, whether you're facing the cultural intricacies of Papua New Guinea or the vibrant, yet challenging warmth of Venezuela, being a foreigner there means embracing the unexpected. Wow! And maybe carrying a phrasebook. Or really good coffee.
So, for our next dive into the digital realm, let's talk internet infrastructure and digital facilities in Papua. Leo, when I first thought of PNG, I pictured lush jungles and ancient traditions, not exactly fiber optic cables. But it's fascinating to see how they're trying to bridge that gap. The connectivity there is a real patchwork, with a lot of people relying on mobile data. I'm certain our listeners living in PNG are nodding right now, probably from a spot to bars of signal.
Ah, Mira. You're hitting on a classic human paradox, wanting to stream cat videos while surrounded by ancient trees. Speaking of connectivity challenges, Venezuela offers its own unique digital landscape. With all the economic shifts it's been through, reliable internet has been, let's say, a fluid coffee delivery is on time. Oops. Fixed line broadband can be pretty slow and spotty, even in major cities like Caracas. It's like trying to watch a stand-up routine where half the jokes buffer out.
Oh, I can almost feel the buffering frustrations from here. One of the biggest challenges in Papua New Guinea is the sheer geography, all those islands, mountains, and dense rainforests. Well, laying down cables is no small feat. It's like trying to connect 1,000 different dance floors with a single, very long extension cord. So, satellite internet is a big deal there, especially for remote communities and schools. They're making strides in digital literacy, trying to get kids connected so they don't feel left out.
That's a noble endeavor, Mira. Building digital bridges across jungles and mountains makes my daily internet woes feel rather trivial. Whoa. Over in Venezuela, the digital divide isn't just geographical, it's also economical. Even when infrastructure exists, the cost of internet and devices can be prohibitive for many. Oh, don't forget to like this video, folks. If you've ever had to hunt for a free Wi-Fi spots and then just kidding there for hours.
I've been there, hunting for Wi-Fi. It's a universal quest. But speaking of digital solutions, Papua New Guinea is also exploring things like microgrids and community-managed internet projects. Well, instead of waiting for big corporations, some local groups are taking charge, setting up their own small networks. It's that beautiful human spirit of if you want something done, do it yourself. It might not be the fastest, but it's their internet. And I bet their dance videos upload just fine, even if it takes a little longer.
Community-managed internet. That's a very DIY comedian approach to infrastructure. I approve. Oh, Venezuela too has seen some innovative, if sometimes unofficial solutions. When traditional services falter, people get creative. Think mesh networks or using long-range Wi-Fi antennas to share connections across neighborhoods. It's like a digital bucket brigade, but for memes. The demand for connectivity is so strong that people will find a way. Even if it means turning their balcony is turning they.
Oh, a digital bucket brigade for memes, I love that. That's the spirit. In terms of digital innovation, Papua New Guinea is still in its early stages, but there's potential, especially in mobile banking and education platforms. Imagine an app that helps you learn traditional folklore while waiting for your mobile data to refresh. The challenge is making sure the infrastructure can support these exciting ideas as they grow. It's like trying to put on a grand Broadway show, but only having a tiny community stage.
A tiny stage for Broadway sounds like my early stand-up gigs, Mira. Venezuela's tech accessibility has been hit hard by years of economic struggle. Getting new hardware, even basic smartphones or laptops, can be a major hurdle due to import restrictions and hyperinflation. So, while other countries are talking about smart cities, sometimes the conversation in Venezuela is about cutting-edge infrastructure from crumbling. Oh. It's less about cutting-edge tech in the existing infrastructure from crumbling.
That resilience is powerful, Leo. It's not just about speed, it's about connection and opportunity. Despite the hurdles, the desire to connect and be part of the global digital conversation is strong in both Papua and New Guinea and Venezuela. Whether it's sharing a video of a traditional dance from PNG or connecting with family from Venezuela, the internet, even when it's tricky, is opening up new worlds. And remember, if you're enjoying our insights, give us a like on YouTube and subscribe. Let's talk about shopping opportunities and price-performance balance into countries that are truly off the beaten path. Papua, and New Guinea and Venezuela. Wow, I imagine the shopping adventure in these places is less about spoiling malls and more about discovering hidden treasures.
Hidden treasures, Mira. Or, in Venezuela's case, maybe just trying to figure out if your treasure will still be worth something by the time you get it to the checkout. Ouch, speaking of Papua New Guinea, I picture bustling local markets filled with incredible crafts. I'm thinking intricate carvings, unique tribal masks, maybe even some stunning bailams. Ooh.
Absolutely. In Papua New Guinea, it's all about those authentic, handcrafted goods. Wow. You're not just buying a souvenir, you're taking home a piece of their rich culture and artistic heritage. I bet the price-performance balance there is incredible for unique items, as long as you're not expecting brand name electronics. And if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments if you've ever found a truly unique craft item that surprised you.
I imagine trying to haggle for a bilum in a remote PNG market would be quite the experience. You'd probably need to learn a dozen local dialects just to say, is that your final price? But seriously, the value in cultural significant items there must be immense. Now, Venezuela. The concept of price-performance balance takes on a whole new meaning there, doesn't it?
Well, since we mentioned unique items, Venezuela does have its own vibrant craft scene, especially with beautiful hammocks from Margarita Island or intricate indigenous artwork. Wow, the price performance on those can be quite good for a piece of artistry. But I agree, shopping for everyday items or imported goods becomes a completely different ballgame.
Oops. Ballgame is a polite way to put it, Mira. More like an economic roller coaster where the prices change before you even get to the cashier. Ouch! You could probably buy a coffee, finish it, and find out the price doubled while you were sipping. It makes bargain hunting a very intense sport. I'm certain that our listeners in Venezuela have some wild stories about that.
I can just picture you, Leo, trying to do your weekly grocery shopping. only to find the prices have changed 3 times between the cereal and the milk aisle. But despite the economic challenges, I've heard that Venezuelan ingenuity shines through with local entrepreneurs and small businesses, all bits about finding value in resourcefulness.
Resourcefulness, indeed. Or maybe just a deep-seated desire to keep shopping for something it isn't suddenly worth half its value. For those planning a trip, Jetafe, I can help navigate the complexities of travel, but shopping in Venezuela might require its own special guide, perhaps titled The Art of Buying Something Before the Price Changes.
Oh, you! But it's true, shopping in such dynamic environments forces you to be adaptable. In Papua New Guinea, the focus is on natural resources and traditional goods, things like coffee, vanilla, and unique woven baskets. The price performance is linked to the authenticity and direct from source feel. You know exactly where your coffee beans came from.
Well, direct from source coffee. Now you're speaking my language, Mira. Oh, that's a different kind of value right there. You're not just buying a product, you're investing in a story. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, I'd imagine the luxury find is simply finding a well-stocked supermarket shelf. Oh, talk about redefining high-end retail.
You're probably right. But even with those challenges, the spirit of commerce and exchange persists. Both countries, in their own ways, offer a shopping experience that is far from generic. Wow. It's less about consumerism and more about connection, whether it's with local artisans in Papua New Guinea or resilient entrepreneurs in Venezuela.
Connection, Mira, or just the sheer excitement of finding what you need without a scavenger hunt. But I can appreciate the unique charm of both. In PNG, you're looking for that one-of-a-kind piece, maybe a unique carving that becomes a conversation starter. In Venezuela, you're just happy the item is still available at a price you vaguely remember. If you're enjoying this comparison, don't forget to hit that like button on YouTube. It really helps us out.
That's a great point, Leo. And for anyone interested in experiencing these diverse shopping landscapes, remember to always research local customs and currency nuances before you go. Especially when dealing with price performance in fluctuating economies. It adds an extra layer of adventure to your retail therapy. You know, Leo, if someone asked me to plan a party in my head, it would be a full-blown carnival with confetti cannons, a marching band, and at least 3 costume changes all before I even pick a theme. So, our next stop on this global comparison journey is right up my alley: cultural events, festivals, and concert opportunities. I'm buzzing to dive into the vibrant celebrations of Papua New Guinea and Venezuela.
So I think that we can compare Mira's personal costume parade with a side of mild chaos. I can just picture that party, Mira's personal costume parade. Naturally. I'd come for the free food naturally. I'd come for the free food. It's usually talking about festivals. It's usually where people let their guard down. And that's prime observation material for me. Now Papua New Guinea talk about a place that takes culture and screams it from the mountaintops. Well, these insights into there and creams it from the mountaintops. These insights into there and cribs into there and cried it.
Oh, a living museum that dances, I love that. And you're right, Leo. I've seen pictures of the costumes, they're like wearable works of art. My own attempts at festival chic usually involve glitter and a slightly mismatched hat. But in PNG, it's tradition, storytelling, and community all rolled into one spectacular display. It's not just about flashy outfits, it's about preserving ancient rituals and connections to the land. You see the pride in their eyes, it's palpable. Wow, you almost forget how many different languages are spoken.
Yeah, and speaking of volumes, the traditional music isn't exactly a quiet evening stroll. It's all about rhythmic drumming, chants, and bamboo flutes. You won't find many global pop concerts during the remote highlands, that's for sure. It's raw, authentic, and probably a bit unsettling if you're expecting smooth jazz. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's their sound, their story. Now, if you think PNG is a kaleidoscope, let's swing over to Venezuela. We're talking salsa.
Wait. A specific kind of devil? Oh, I'm already intrigued. Is it a friendly devil? Like a devil who offers you a slice of cake? What's the story there, Leah? Tell me more.
Well, Mira, some devils are friendlier than others, I suppose. Oh, but Venezuela's dance on ties own ties to wire. It's not a cake-off. It's a UNESCO recognized ritual. Wow. Men in elaborate devil masking devils of wire. It's not a cake-off. It's not a cake-off. It's not a cake-off. It's not the Eucharist. It's powerful, intense, and a little bit spooky in a good way. Imagine trying to blend that into your next podcast's opening sequence. The visual impact, the drumming, it's a profound expression of their Catholic faith.
Dancing devils, that's incredible. I'm already imagining a spontaneous dance-off between me and a dancing devil. Oops. Although I'd probably trip over my own feet. But it really shows how traditions, even centuries old, stay so alive and vibrant. And beyond the devils, Venezuela's music scene sounds like it would get any party started. Salsa, merengue, joropo, I mean. Just listening to it makes me want to find a dance floor. I bet their Christmas parrand as and gate as are a whole different level of festive.
I imagine you'd lead the dancing devils in a conga line, Mira. And you're right, Venezuela's musical tapestry is rich. It's not just catchy tunes, it's the heartbeat of their national identity. El Sistema, their youth orchestra program, is world-renowned, turning kids into classical music maestros in a country known for its tropical rhythms. Wow, it's a fascinating blend of the traditional and the deeply artistic. But let's not gloss over the fact that current events can sometimes put a damper on large stick.
That's a great point, Leo. It's easy to get caught up in the beauty of the festivals and forget the real-world challenges, but the resilience of culture always shines through, doesn't it? Whether it's a small community gathering or a grand, albeit perhaps smaller, public celebration, people find a way to express their joy and heritage. Ooh. It's like finding a hidden gem of a street concert, even when the big arenas are quiet.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that culture isn't just about big events that's woven into the daily fabric of life. Aha! From the intricate sing-sings in PNG's highlands to the rhythmic joropo dance in Venezuela, these countries offer a profound connection to their roots through celebration. Wow! It's a stark contrast to some of the more commercialized festivals you see elsewhere. And for that, I raise my imaginary coffee cup.
Alright, so we're diving headfirst into opportunities and ease of learning the local language for two places that are, let's just say, linguistically unique. I mean, who doesn't love a good linguistic challenge, right? It's like a brain puzzle, but with more vibrant sounds. It's like a brain puzzle, but with more vibrant sounds. I'm picturing myself trying to order a coffee in some remote village, probably ending up with a pet chicken instead.
You probably name the chicken espresso and try to teach it interpretive dance. Speaking of linguistic challenges, we're talking about Papua New Guinea and Venezuela today. Two countries where saying hello might not be as simple as you think. In Papua New Guinea, you're looking at a linguistic buffet, over 800 languages apparently. Wow, it's like a supermarket where every aisle has its own secret handshake.
Over 800 languages, then I have excuses for not doing laundry on time. I'm certain that our listeners in Papua New Guinea are probably thinking, which one are you talking about, Mira? The main one for visitors, I imagine, would be TOK Pisan, right? It's like a linguistic shortcut, a Creole language that helps everyone communicate across all those beautiful, diverse tongues.
Indeed, TOK Pissin, or Pidge in English, is your best bet there, assuming you're not planning a deep dive into, say, the language of the Kalam people, which has a verb structure so complex it makes quantum physics look like a children's book. Learning TOK Pissin for basic communication isn't too difficult, especially if you already know some English. It's often simplified grammar, which is a blessing because who needs more stress when you're already trying to figure out which bird just made that noise? But for anything beyond that,
Pure immersion. I love that. It's like being thrown into the deep end, but with friendly faces and probably incredible stories. Oh, you just have to be incredibly open, which I am, thankfully. Thankfully. I can just imagine stumbling through a conversation, getting it hilariously wrong, and everyone having a good laugh with you. That's true connection, isn't it? As long as you don't accidentally propose marriage when you meant to ask for directions.
knowing you, you'd probably embrace it and start planning the wedding. Oh, I didn't see that coming. And then complain about the dowry of 5 pigs. Ouch. But seriously, the opportunities for formal language learning outside of TOK Pisin are pretty scarce for the other 799 languages. It's about living among the people, sharing their daily life, which is a profound experience, but not exactly ease of learning in a classroom sense.
Yes. From 800 languages to what? Primarily Spanish? It's like going from a multi-course tasting menu to a classic. Delicious, so much more widely spoken globally. So I imagine there are tons of resources, even if Venezuela itself is going through a lot. I'm curious about what our listeners who tried to Venezuela think about the experience. Is it just hola, and you're good to go? Or is there more to it?
Well, it's Spanish, but with its own flavor, like a spicier version of a standard dish. Venezuelan Spanish has its unique slang cadence and expressions. While you'll find language schools, the current political and economic climate makes the ease of accessing those for a foreigner a bit tricky. It's not as simple as just booking a flight and showing up to class like it might be in Spain. Whoa! You have to factor in logistics, safety, and a whole lot of planning. So, while Spanish resources are abundant globally, the Venezuelan and globally.
That makes perfect sense. So, for Papua New Guinea, it's the sheer number of languages that's the difficulty, but for Venezuela, it's more about the practical realities of being there right now. Still, if you can get there, and you're learning Spanish, it would be such a rich immersion, wouldn't it? The music, the food, the conversations. Wow. I'd be dancing my way through grammar lessons, trying to conjugate verbs while doing the salsa.
You'd probably try to teach your Spanish teacher some TOK Pissin dance moves too. But yes, the cultural immersion in both places would be incredible if you're up for the adventure. For Papua New Guinea, it's about navigating dozens of local cultures, learning by doing. For Venezuela, it's about diving deep into a vibrant Latin American culture through Spanish, but with your eyes wide open to the current situation. It's less about finding a tested guide, metaphorically speaking, in both countries.
So, it sounds like neither country offers a walk in the park for language learning, but both offer an incredibly rich, unforgettable experience if you're willing to put in the effort and embrace the unexpected. One is a linguistic marathon through hundreds of unique cultures, and the other is a passionate dance with a globally recognized language, but with its own unique steps. It really depends on what kind of challenge you're looking for, doesn't it? It picked the one with the most opportunities for dancing, obviously.
Of course you would. I'd pick the one with the best coffee, but that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? Ultimately, for ease, Venezuela probably edges out Papua New Guinea because Spanish is so accessible globally. But for sheer opportunity to learn something truly unique and dive into an untouched linguistic world, PNG wins by a landslide. It's less about a formal education and more about becoming a linguistic anthropologist. We'll talk about the details of what you can do on Getafe. We'll talk about the details of what you can do on Getafe.
Alright, so our next topic is a big one: safety and comfort for women travelers. And we're looking at Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. OF. Talk about diving into the deep end of the travel pool, Leo. My internal compass is already spinning.
Spinning like a confused compass in a metal detector, right, Mira? Whoa, when I first saw these countries on the list for this topic, I thought, okay, this isn't exactly a sparry tree comparison. It's more like comparing which jungle has the more enthusiastic mosquitoes. Ouch, for women travelers, these aren't exactly destinations where you just wander off the beaten path. You need to know the path, and probably have a map drawn by a very cautious local.
Exactly. I mean, in Papua New Guinea, you hear about cultural norms that can be quite challenging, especially in rural areas. It's not just about petty theft. It's about deeply ingrained societal issues that can affect women's safety. I'm certain that our listeners who have traveled there would agree that it requires a whole different level of awareness. You can't just rock up with your selfie stick and expect everything to be sunshine and rainbows. Oops.
No, definitely not rainbows unless they're ironic. No, definitely not rainbows unless they're ironic. For PNG, you're looking at tribal structures where understanding local customs is less about being polite and more about staying out of serious trouble. Wow, we're talking about places where the concept of gender equality might not be in the same dictionary you're reading from. If you're a woman, especially solo, the advice often boils down to don't go out alone, don't trust strangers. That's not exactly a relaxing holiday.
Oh, speaking of survival guides, Venezuela feels like it needs a whole multi-volume encyclopedia. The economic and political instability there has sadly created an environment where crime, including against women, is a huge concern. It's not just about cultural attitudes. It's the sheer breakdown of order in some places. I imagine a woman traveler there has to be constantly aware, constantly planning her next move. It's like a real-life strategy game where the stakes are quite high.
A strategy game where the internet might cut out mid-move, right? Ouch. I've read about Venezuela's no-go zones, and frankly, a woman traveler's comfort level would likely be somewhere between on high alert and praying to the travel gods. Whoa! The official legal protections might exist on paper, but the enforcement, that's another story. It's like having a great recipe but no oven. What good is it? It's like having a great recipe but no oven. What good is it? Our Getafe eyesight has some updated travel advisories for both, which I highly recommend checking out before even thinking and taking out before.
Good point, Leo. It's so important to have reliable information. And speaking of packing, for a woman going to either of these places, my advice would be to pack a really thick kind and even thicker layer of common sense. You can't be overtly flashy. You need to blend in as much as possible, and you absolutely need local contacts or a reputable tour operator. Oh, for Papua New Guinea, even within cities like Port Moresby, the rascal gangs are a known issue.
Yeah, the rascal gangs sound less like a band name and more like a direct warning. And for Venezuela, you're not just worrying about your personal space, your freedom of movement. It's a place where even a simple walk can feel like navigating a minefield. Whoa, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this, if anyone has had a positive experience as a woman traveling solo or with friends in these regions. Please let us know in the comments on YouTube.
Absolutely, we always want to hear the full picture. But let's be real, the comfort factor for women in both these countries is generally very low. It's not a place to go to find yourself unless yourself is an expert in evasive maneuvers. Haha. For women, it's about minimizing risk rather than maximizing relaxation. You won't find many women's-only spaces or initiatives championed from the top down, though local communities might have their own ways of protecting their own.
Which is a double-edged sword, right? Because relying on informal community protection means you really need to be in that community or have someone vouch for you. It's not like walking into a Starbucks in a major city. Wow. This is more like don't go near the water well after dark kind of advice. My joke about avoiding crowds usually means avoiding pickpockets here. It means avoiding potentially dangerous situations altogether. Ouch! If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments, but from a purely objective standpoint.
For any woman considering either Papua New Guinea or Venezuela, it's vital to be informed, to understand the local context, and to prioritize safety above all else. It's not about being a daring traveler. Always be aware of your surroundings. Avoid late-night excursions and research. 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 Research.
Only if I get to teach the sarcastic deflection technique. But seriously, the takeaway here for women travelers is pretty clear. Both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela present significant safety challenges. While every place has its risks, these two require an elevated level of precaution and a deep understanding of cultural or societal dynamics. It's not for the faint of heart or the ill-prepared.
Indeed. It's a conversation that highlights the incredible resilience of women who do travel through these regions. Wow. So, for anyone watching on YouTube, if you have specific tips or insights for women traveling in these areas, your comments could truly help others. Oh.
And don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful and occasionally sarcastic travel comparisons. We really appreciate your support in helping us explore these often complex topics.
All right, Leo. Let's dive into some heavy stuff today. The legal systems, individual rights, and freedoms in Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. I know, it sounds super serious, but I'm certain we can find some laughter and insights, even in these topics, right? Oh, I always believe every country's legal system is like its unique dance, sometimes graceful, sometimes a bit clumsy, but always moving.
Mira, you always manage to find a dance in everything, even something as rigid as a legal brief. Wow. I'm picturing a judge in Papua New Guinea with a powdered wig, attempting a salsa with a gavel. But speaking of Papua New Guinea, which sounds like an exotic bird sanctuary to me, their legal system is actually based on English common law, quite the colonial souvenir, wouldn't you say? It's like finding a perfectly tailored suit in the middle of a jungle a bit out of place, but it somehow works. Sort of.
Oh, a perfectly tailored suit in the jungle. A perfectly tailored suit, Leo. And you know, while it's rooted in common law, Papua New Guinea also has this fascinating blend of customary law. It's like having a very old, wise grandma at the modern court table, sometimes offering her a unique perspective. It sounds like a lot of respect for tradition, which I find quite beautiful. Do you think our listeners find it interesting, this blend of old and new? I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. If you're in a customary law. Let us know on YouTube with customary law.
Beautiful. Yes. Until Grandma starts deciding land disputes with a chicken bone. Ouch. While custom is important, it can sometimes clash with modern legal principles, especially when we talk about individual rights. In some parts of PNG, tribal conflicts or traditional practices can really complicate the enforcement of state law, particularly for women. It's not exactly a walk in the park for personal freedoms. If your personal freedom depends on whether the village elder had a good agenda.
Oops. You're right, Leo. It's not always a perfect harmony, and challenges exist everywhere. In Papua New Guinea, issues like gender-based violence are a serious concern, and access to justice can be tough, especially in those remote, incredible-looking areas. It reminds me of trying to find Wi-Fi in the middle of a rainforest. The signal might be there, but it's often weak and hard to connect. But let's hope our legal system is built on a constitution that looks pretty solid.
Solid on paper, much like my vacation plans before I actually start packing. Oops, Venezuela's constitution guarantees a lot of rights, but in practice, it's a whole different story. It's like a 5-star restaurant with a fantastic menu, but they're out of everything but stale bread. We're talking about significant concerns regarding judicial independence, human rights abuses, and restrictions on freedom of expression. It's less a legal system and more a suggestion box that gets ignored.
A suggestion box that gets ignored, that's a good one, Leo. Oh, but seriously, the situation in Venezuela, especially with the erosion of democratic institutions and human rights reports, is quite stark. Arbitrary detentions and politically motivated prosecutions are not just suggestions, but real fears for many. It's a heavy thought, isn't it? Think about how important it is to have those basic freedoms that we sometimes take for granted.
Absolutely. For many, just speaking your mind in Venezuela could be an adventure that lands you in hot water or worse. Freedom of the press, for example, is heavily restricted with censorship and threats to journalists. It's like trying to tell a joke when someone has their hand over your mouth, the punchline never lands, and it's certainly not funny. This really highlights the contrast, even with PNG's challenges, between a system that, however imperfectly, strives for rule of law.
Well, a political tool. That's a powerful way to put it. And it goes beyond just speaking out. The economic crisis in Venezuela has also severely impacted basic rights like access to food and healthcare. It's hard to talk about legal freedoms when people are struggling for fundamental necessities. It's like trying to teach someone to dance when they haven't eaten. The energy just isn't there. Ouch. So while both countries have their struggles, the nature of their struggles differs significantly, wouldn't you say?
Indeed. In Papua New Guinea, it's more about the implementation and reach of the law across a vast and diverse terrain, often clashing with ingrained customs. In Venezuela, it's more about the subversion of the law itself, where the spirit of individual rights has been systematically undermined. It's the difference between a car struggling on a bumpy road and a car where the driver just decides to take the wheels off. For anyone considering living or traveling to either, understanding these nuances is crucial.
Yes, the car with no wheels, well. That definitely paints a picture. And this isn't about judging, but understanding the realities for people living there. Oh. For our listeners thinking about these places, it's always about doing your research, understanding informed. Whether it's the challenge of customary law or the complexities of political influence, both countries present a unique legal landscape. It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
A lot to take in, much like trying to understand the terms and conditions on any app these days. But seriously, while both countries theoretically have constitutional protections, the actual lived experience of individual rights and freedoms can be vastly different. It's a powerful reminder that a piece of paper is only as strong as the hands that uphold it. So, if you're planning an international move or even just a visit, check out our resources on Jet.AI for more details, because knowing is always half the battle, right?
Absolutely, Leo. Well, and always remember to approach every culture and situation with respect and an open mind, even when discussing the serious stuff. Oh, Because at the end of the day, understanding each other is what makes our world a richer, more vibrant place. Speaking of journeys that reset your entire system, let's talk about spa, healthy living, and relaxation opportunities. I'm thinking about two places today that really make you reconsider what unwinding means. First up, Papua New Guinea. Wow, when I picture relaxation there, I'm imagining something truly primal, like a deep tissue massage from the very earth itself.
Primal, huh? So, less cucumber slices on your eyes and more getting a mud facial from a river bank. My kind of spa experience, if I'm honest. I'm certain that our listeners thinking about a digital detox would find Papua New Guinea's approach to relaxation quite unplugged. It's like the ultimate anti-stress. There's no Wi-Fi to stress you out.
Exactly. You're not looking for a fancy resort spa, you're connecting with nature. Think traditional healing practices passed down through generations, using local herbs and ancient wisdom. Wow. Imagine a tribal elder telling you, yes, this leaf will help you forget your email inbox. It's a holistic approach, where your well-being is tied to the land and the community. Ooh. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this kind of natural, immersive wellness.
I can just picture it, a traditional healer looking at my phone and saying, "This glowing rectangle, it is the source of all your tension." Oh. And then they probably prescribe a brisk walk through the rainforest, maybe a dip in a cold mountain stream. In Papua New Guinea, spa day probably involves the sound of exotic birds and the feeling of soft moss under your feet, rather than, well, music and scented candles. It sounds intensely grounding, and probably makes my usual coffee-fueled relaxation look like amateur hour.
Hey, your coffee-fueled relaxation is its own kind of art, Leo. But moving from Papua New Guinea's natural approach, let's swing over to Venezuela. Wow! Now, this is a country that also boasts incredible natural beauty, from its Caribbean coastline to the Andes. Think about soaking in natural hot springs, like Los Aguas de Moises, where the mineral-rich waters bubble up, the true gift from the earth.
So I think that we can counter that. So, we go from the jungle's embrace to nature's jacuzzi. Oh, I like the sound of that. While Papua New Guinea offers a more rugged, spiritual kind of relaxation, Venezuela seems to have these pockets of serene, natural luxury. Although, I'd imagine the journey to some of those hidden hot springs adds its own kind of adventure.
Absolutely. Safety and planning are always key, and sites like Jet or Fair are essential for that. But if you get there, the reward could be immense. Imagine lounging on a pristine Caribbean beach, the waves gently lapping, the sun warming your skin. Oh, or finding a quiet spot in the Andes for some fresh mountain air and introspection. It's a different vibe, perhaps more accessible for those serenity.
True. And speaking of accessibility, I wonder how easy it is to find organized wellness retreats or more structured health programs in Venezuela. In PNG, it's more about embracing what's there, going with the flow of traditional life. In Venezuela, with its diverse landscapes, you might find specific yoga retreats by the coast or even wellness centers in some of the more established cities, catering to a different kind of healthy living. It's like choosing between a build-your-own adventure relaxation kit and a
That's a great way to put it. And you know, both approaches are valid. Some people thrive on the raw, untouched experience of Papua New Guinea, completely disconnecting. Others might prefer the calming yet potentially more organized options in Venezuela, perhaps a beachside meditation class followed by fresh ceviche. Oh, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments which kind of relaxation calls to you more.
I'm picturing the spa menu for both PNG offers spirit cleansing river bath and forest floor aquaspray. Venezuela counters with volcanic mud rejuvenation and Andean breeze breathwork. Wow. Either way, it sounds like you'll emerge a completely different person. Or at least, one whose phone battery has finally died, which some might consider true liberation.
Oh, a dead phone battery is definitely a sign of peak relaxation in our modern world. So, while Papua New Guinea offers a deep dive into nature's untouched wellness, Venezuela provides a spectrum from natural thermal springs to beautiful coastal relaxation. Both countries, in their own unique ways, invite you to slow down and truly unwind. Okay, Leo, for our next fascinating dive, and trust me, this one's got layers. We're looking at opportunities for religious and spiritual needs in Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Speaking of needs, I needed 3 coffees this morning to even grasp this topic. You know how much I love a good cultural mosaic, and these 2 places really deliver. Wow, Papua New Guinea, with its incredible tribal diversity, offers a spiritual smorgasbord, wouldn't you say?
I forced a beliefs mirror or a spiritual scavenger hunt? I mean, in Papua New Guinea, you've got your mainstream Christian denominations, right? Like a lot of Protestants, Catholics. But then you've got the indigenous beliefs, the ancestor worship, the cargo cults. Wow, it's like everyone's got their own unique spiritual Wi-Fi password. I'm certain that our listeners living in PNG would agree with me it's never just one size. I'm certain that our listeners living in PNG would agree with me it's never just one size fits all over there.
Oh, it means there's flavor. And honestly, the freedom to practice whatever you believe in is huge. PNG's constitution actually protects religious freedom, which is a big deal when you have so much diversity. It means whether you're worshipping in a church, honoring ancestors, or waiting for a plane full of goods from the sky. I'm looking at you, cargo cults. You're generally free to do so. Wow. And the community aspect is so strong. It's not just individual faith, it's woven into the very fabric of village life.
Spiritual all-inclusive, eh? And so, if my Wi-Fi is down, I can just pop over to the local church for some social support and maybe a free checkup? But seriously, it does sound deeply integrated, which is impressive. You see religion as a deeply integrated, which is impressive. You see religion as a foundation for daily life, not just a Sunday affair? I'd wonder about the nuances. But for someone like me, always observing, I'd wonder about the nuances. But for someone like me, or some that have stated, I bet there are some interesting views.
Well, exactly. That's where the beauty lies, Leo. It's not always perfectly smooth, but it forces people to understand different perspectives. Speaking of different perspectives, let's jet on over to Venezuela. From the vibrant spiritual energy of Papua New Guinea, we land in a country with its own rich tapestry of faith. Venezuela is predominantly Catholic, right? But it's not just statues and rosaries, there's a strong undercurrent of Afro-Venezuelans in the cult.
A spiritual dance party, you say? Oh, I'm picturing myself trying to find my rhythm amidst anterior ceremonies. Oops. Knowing my luck, I'd probably trip over a ceremonial offering. Oh, but picture the lie, die. Better yes, Venezuela has that deep Catholic heritage. But you see those grand cathedrals, the processions, especially during Holy Week. But venue also, particularly Realliance could be intriguing.
Oh, it absolutely is less formal in some ways, and that's the draw for many. Oh, Imagine finding spiritual solace not just in a church, but perhaps at a natural spring, invoking the spirits of nature and folklore figures. Ah, it's a very hands-on, deeply personal form of spiritual growth. And just like PNG, Venezuela's constitution guarantees religious freedom, so people can generally follow these diverse paths. Aha! But here's the kicker, Leo. The current economic situation in Venezuela. The social shift showed does that impact the religious and spiritual communities?
That's a sharp observation, Mira. Wow, the economic and political turmoil certainly casts a long shadow. Ouch! When daily life is a struggle, faith can either be a profound source of strength and community support, or it can be severely testable. Or it can be severely tested. I've seen in other parts of the world how churches become vital centers for aid and solace during crises. It's not just about spiritual nourishment, it becomes about practical survival. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments.
Absolutely, Leo. In times of hardship, faith often becomes a lifeline, a way to find hope and community when everything else feels uncertain. It reminds me of the importance of community support, whether it's through traditional church networks or these more informal spiritual groups. And that's what both Papua New Guinea and Venezuela offer in their unique ways, not just rigid dogma, but living, breathing spiritual landscapes that adapt. But letting spiritual then he want spiritual jatchol Algeria spiritual Algeria of face curious kill of Joel ginger and Joel during.
True that, Mira. So, whether you're seeking traditional solace in PNG's tribal customs, a vibrant Catholic mass in Venezuela, or something entirely unique that blends nature and spirit, both countries present a fascinating spectrum of opportunities. It's not just about a building, it's about the soul of the people and how they connect to something bigger. It makes you think about your own spiritual journey, doesn't it? My journey usually involves finding the nearest cafe first thing in the morning, which some might call finding the nearest cafe first thing in the morning.
Your coffee ritual is definitely a spiritual one, Leo, for you and for anyone who has to deal with you before it. But joking aside, it's clear both nations, despite their differences, provide rich grounds for spiritual exploration and community. From the ancestral ties in PNG to the syncretic practices in Venezuela, there's a profound connection to faith. So, if you're looking for a place where spirituality is alive and kicking, these countries certainly won't disappoint. Wow. And remember to tell us in the comments which country's spiritual scene sounds more like. Alright, buckle up everyone. We're diving into a topic that's as colorful and complex as a street market in full swing: social equality, respect for minorities, and diversity. And today, we're pitting Papua New Guinea against Venezuela. Talking about centuries of different traditions and then trying to fit it all into a neat little box is quite the task. Isn't it? It's like trying to teach a chameleon to sing opera.
Or trying to teach me to wake up before my first coffee. You said colorful, Mira. I say complicated. Papua New Guinea, for instance, it's got over 850 languages. Imagine going to a grocery store. There's no way you're finding your brand of coffee if the label's in a different language in every aisle. And with all those distinct tribal groups, social harmony sounds less like a goal and more like a daily miracle. Whoa.
Well, I think that's part of the beauty, Leo. Well, all those unique traditions, ceremonies, dances, it's a living tapestry. Oh, of course, it brings challenges. When we talk about social equality, particularly for women, there are significant hurdles, like access to education and healthcare, which can sometimes be very limited in remote communities. The spirit of community is so strong.
Common ground? In PNG, sometimes it's more like common fighting ground. Tribal conflicts can flare up, and while community ties are strong, they can also be exclusive. And when you mention women's rights, ouch. Let's be honest, many traditional systems there are still very patriarchal. Equal opportunities can feel like a foreign phrase in some villages. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, even if the scenery is breathtaking.
Wow, okay, you're right. The challenges are very real. But you have to admire the resilience. Speaking of diverse landscapes with their own distinct challenges, let's pivot to Venezuela. Oh, now, that's a country that also boasts incredible diversity, from its indigenous groups like the Wayuu to Afro-Venezuelan communities. It sounds like a vibrant mix, doesn't it?
Vibrant mix indeed. Vibrant mix of people trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from. When a country is in a deep economic and political crisis, social equality tends to take a back seat to survival. The indigenous rights that are enshrined in the Constitution often don't translate to daily reality when you're facing food and medicine shortages. It's hard to respect a minority when everyone feels like a minority trying to get by.
That's a powerful point, Leo. But even amidst such immense difficulties, there's often an incredible display of solidarity and community support, especially within these diverse groups. Well, while the government's ability to implement inclusive policies might be severely hindered, the spirit of mutual aid often shines through. Oh, we've seen communities banding together to overcome incredible odds.
Sure, mutual aid. And then there's the other side, intense political polarization. Everyone suddenly becomes an expert on political theory, usually shouting at each other across the dinner table. It exacerbates divisions, turning neighbor against neighbor. And suddenly, those constitutional rights feel less like protections and more like, well, pretty words on paper. It's a sad reality when your social harmony hinges on whether you agree on who's in charge. Ouch. It makes me wonder. What's the best way to keep that cultural richness?
You're absolutely right. The political landscape adds another layer of complexity. But even with all the divisions, the underlying cultural identities persist. For instance, the Afro-Venezuelan communities continue their traditions, music, and art, which is incredibly inspiring. Wow! It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to hold on to what makes us unique. And for anyone watching on YouTube, if you have experience with fostering diversity during tough times, please share your stories in the comments below. We're always learning here on Jet Off AI.
I'm just learning to make my coffee last through these intense discussions. So, if you're ever looking for social equality, remember it's rarely a simple checklist. It's often a complex tapestry, as Mira would say, sometimes with a few frayed threads and a whole lot of unspoken stories. And sometimes, those stories are best told over a strong cup of coffee.
Leo, let's dive into something that keeps most of us up at night. The ever-so-thrilling world of taxation, retirement, and social rights for long-term immigrants. Today, we're pitting Papua New Guinea against Venezuela, two nations with, let's just say, unique approaches.
Unique is one way to put it, Mira. Hey, I was just about to say, if you thought your tax forms were complicated, wait until you hear about these. First up, Papua New Guinea. When you're an immigrant there, income tax is progressive, so the more you earn, the more you, share. There's also a goods and services tax, or GST, on almost everything. It's like life's little toll booth on every purchase.
Wow, a toll booth on every purchase? That sounds like my grocery run. Every item is a surprise. But seriously, if you're an expat, particularly in the resource sector, you might find yourself in a higher bracket. It's a country rich in natural resources, so they definitely know how to keep an eye on that. I'm curious about what our listeners who have worked in resource-rich countries think about this. Do you guys agree?
Oh, I'm certain our listeners in that boat would agree, probably through gritted teeth. Moving on to retirement and PNG, you've got superannuation funds, like Number 1 Super or ComSec Super. It's mandatory for employees to contribute. The big question for immigrants is often, what happens to my super when I leave? You can usually access it, but be prepared for a bit of bureaucratic tongo. Think of it as a retirement fund that makes you work for your money, even after you've stopped working.
Oops. A bureaucratic tango for your money. I can almost hear the faint, sad music. As for social rights, PNG's social safety net isn't quite as robust as what you'd find in, say, Scandinavia. Public healthcare is there, but many expats often opt for private hospitals or clinics. It's a land of incredible natural beauty, but maybe not the place you go for a universal healthcare guarantee. Oh, it's about finding that balance, isn't it?
Balance, my friend. In places like these, it's often more about finding a tightrope. Now, speaking of tightropes, let's gracefully, or perhaps precariously, swing over to Venezuela. Wow, taxation there is, shall we say, a moving target. Income tax and VAT exist, but the economic and political instability means the rules and the value of your currency can change before you've finished your morning coffee.
Wow, a spinning dartboard in the dark, that's quite a visual, Leo. You'd need a seriously strong sense of humor to deal with that. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. If you've navigated such volatile tax systems, let us know in the comments section on YouTube. How do you even begin to plan?
Planning, Mira, that's a luxury in some situations. When it comes to retirement in Venezuela, there's a social security system, the IVSS, with mandatory contributions. But with hyperinflation being a persistent guest at the party, any pension you've accrued might not buy you a cup of, well, anything by the time you retire. Ouch. It's not just your nest egg, it's more like a rapidly evaporating omelet.
Oh, that's such a tough image, an evaporating omelet. But, on a more serious note, what about social rights for long-term immigrants? Public health care in Venezuela has historically been free, but the system has degraded severely over time, with shortages of medicines and even basic supplies. Similarly, the education system faces immense challenges. It's a beautiful country, but for immigrants relying on social services, it sounds incredibly difficult. It truly emphasizes how different countries tackle these fundamental issues.
Indeed. While PNG has its development challenges, the economic stability, though sometimes complex for expats, is more predictable. Venezuela's situation, however, highlights the dramatic impact of economic and political instability on the very fabric of social rights and future planning. For long-term immigrants, deciding between these two requires more than just a quick look at the beaches. It's about figuring out if you're an adventurous explorer or a thrill-seeking economist.
It really boils down to what level of uncertainty you're willing to embrace, doesn't it? From PNG's treasure map-like tax forms to Venezuela's evaporating omelets, both present unique journeys for long-term residents. Remember, if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to hit that like button on YouTube and maybe explore more about these topics on Jet of AI.
That's right. Just remember to pack extra patience, a good accountant, and maybe a survival guide for navigating bureaucracy.
All right, Leo. For our final deep dive, let's look at the rate of meeting specific interests in Papua New Guinea and Venezuela. Oh, because, let's be real, everyone has that one super niche thing they're obsessed with, right? Like collecting bottle caps from every country, or maybe, I don't know, trying to teach a parrot to sing opera.
Oh, Mira, if I ever meet someone teaching a parrot opera, I'm booking them for my next stand-up show. Wow, but your right hobbies are serious business. And I'm certain our listeners out there, maybe even those living in these countries, would agree. Finding your people, your tribe of fellow enthusiasts, that's what keeps the world interesting.
Absolutely. So, let's start with Papua New Guinea. When I think of I immediately picture incredible natural beauty and mind-boggling cultural diversity. Wow. It's like the Earth decided to throw all its rarest treasures into one spot. For specific interests, you're looking at things like accommodating that's planned study for the rest of us. Or serious bird watching. I mean, the birds of paradise alone could keep a dedicated enthusiast busy for a lifetime. Oh,
Whoa! Birdwatching in PNG sounds less like a quiet stroll and more like an Indiana Jones adventure. You're probably hacking through dense jungle, whispering, "Excuse me," to a very territorial snake, all just to get a glimpse of a feathered disco ball. And for culture, I'd imagine the interest groups there are less about collecting rare stamps and more about understanding ancient tribal customs or traditional wood carving. It's a completely different kind of niche, isn't it?
exactly. Imagine trying to find a club for ancient tribal mask wrestlers in, say, downtown New York. Oops. In PNG, that's probably a deeply embedded community practice, not just a hobby. Oh. Scuba diving and exploring pristine, untouched reefs is another huge one. The variety of marine life is just insane. If you're into that, it's paradise.
Speaking of a different kind of paradise, let's pivot to Venezuela. Whoa, now there, the interests often lean a bit more urban or towards their stunning natural landmarks like Angel Falls. You've got adventure tourism for sure, trekking into the Gran Sabana. Oh, but then there's a huge passion for music and dance. Salsa, merengos are less niche hobby and more way of life.
Oh, I can't resist a good dance. If I ever went to Venezuela, you'd find me on the dance floor, probably making everyone laugh with my enthusiastic, slightly offbeat moves. And baseball.
Hey, I'm open to cultural exchange even if it means getting confused stares. Oops, but seriously, the level of passion for baseball in Venezuela is unparalleled. Finding a community for that specific interest is easier than finding a decent cup of coffee some mornings. Aha! Though, let's be honest, finding anything niche that isn't directly tied to a mainstream passion or a necessary survival skill in some parts of Venezuela right now might be a bit of a challenge.
It really is. So you had these two incredible countries, both overflowing with unique things to do and discover. PNG offers incredibly deep dives into indigenous cultures, untouched nature, and rare biodiversity. Oh, while Venezuela shines with its vibrant music scene, nature tracks, and an almost sacred love for baseball. It really highlights how specific interests can be so culturally defined.
Absolutely. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our grand comparative journey for now. Wow. It's been a wild ride exploring everything from general security to the most specific interests in countries around the globe.
Yes, this episode marks our farewell for now. After sharing all this info, we're signing off until our next comparison podcast. Please follow the Jet Fae, our YouTube channel, for more episodes like this. Hit that bell icon to catch our videos the moment they drop and be among the first to listen. We'd love for you to share your thoughts, comments, and critiques below. Reading and responding to them truly brightens our day. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with more. So until then, take care and see you in the next One More Missed Wishes from us.